in the stream. It exists.
It's
so
somewhere.
just
It's
give
out
it a
there.
minute. It's out there. It exists. I've forgotten to click start, so now you can watch it starting as of
Perfect.
2 minutes after. Problem solved.
So I mentioned McCole Hardman. Happened yesterday afternoon. McCole Hardman back in Kansas City. We can get to his impact, but initially, I'll be honest, I was surprised. I really was.
We had kind of joked on the side like they're not going to go after McCole. So, yeah, I'd be honest. I didn't see it coming either.
I definitely was surprised by the move. You know, this is something that we've talked about in the past with other Chiefs players that have left the organization, that a lot of times when that happens, the door kind of is slammed shut. Well, obviously, we have to reevaluate that thought process. We've discussed that, and there's been examples of it not happening. You know, when they've let go other pieces, Justin Houston in the past and others, they haven't brought them back. This one, 6 months later, they're back. McCole Hardman, we'll get to Frank Clark, who looks like he's back today as well with the team.
Get physical, apparently.
So that has to be noted here, that anytime in the future under this regime, if a former Chiefs player is available again, we can't just say, well, they're not bringing that guy back because the ship has sailed. I can't say that anymore. A lot of us, Pete Sweeney and I, were saying that in agreement. But obviously that has shifted as well. So McCole Hardman is back. I got no problem with the trade compensation. Okay, let's relax a little bit. They're sending a 2025 sixth-round pick to the Jets and a 2025 seventh-round pick.
Hate to go full Kyle Shanahan. We might all be dead by then. Are you really worried about 2025 picks?
I'm definitely not worried. I'm certainly not worried about it messing up the fifth-round pick comp formula either. So let's chill on what they gave up. I have no problem. They're taking a flyer. They got nothing to lose here, right?
Here's the only thing that I think I'm in the minority in. I'm sorry, but this is a clear upgrade. I know that it's not a massive upgrade. I'm not here to tell you it's the difference between Sky Moore and Devontae Adams. But as I sent out the tweet last night and really started to research it more, McCole Hardman averaged more yards. And by the way, nobody liked McCole Hardman was here, so we can talk about that here in a minute too. Nobody wanted him while he was here. Now we're all like throwing confetti parties that he's back because of where the wide receivers have been. He averaged 37 yards a game when he played in games for Kansas City in his time here. That is more than every single wide receiver on the roster right now except Rashee Rice. That is more currently than Kadarius Toney's ever averaged in his NFL career, more than Sky Moore averages now, and he's better than he was last year. And it's an upgrade from that perspective. He's been a more productive NFL player at every stage of his career than Kadarius Toney and then Sky Moore. That's why they're making this move. They wanted a slight upgrade. They wanted a guy familiar with the system.
Got no problem with the move. Got no problem with the compensation. I think he can help them as a punt returner. I think he can help them in the red zone. We'll talk about that specifically in a second. I think, as you tried to be cautious with how you were saying it as well, do I think it helps the wide receiver room? Absolutely. But let's not forget what 4 months ago we were saying.
Did not want
Hell, let's not forget what we were saying 3 weeks ago heading into the Jets game. That he wasn't able to get on the field and all of that, and like, oh, look, they made the right decision. Like, that was a conversation Chiefs fans were having, looking at Juju Smith-Schuster and McCole Hardman, saying, man, good thing. Exactly, the conversation was, good thing they got rid of those guys because they can't do anything elsewhere. They're washed. That was a real conversation people were having. Fast forward
Certainly
now,
Juju,
October 19th, now people are like, well, man, it's a big upgrade for this wide receiver. It's just funny to me. I do think he helps.
So big upgrade. No.
I think it speaks to the rest of the room more it does to me about McCole Hardman, right? To me, it's very telling about Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney in particular and what they have not gotten from both of those individuals. The reason why they were willing to walk on McCole Hardman, because they could have totally have retained him to begin with if they wanted to, is they felt confident. Let's be real. They felt confident that Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore were going to be able to fill that void and some. And to this point, that has not happened, and there's not a whole lot of reason to believe that it's going to for those two players. So you bring back McCole Hardman, who knows the system. So there's no, it's going to take 5 weeks to get him up to speed. No,
play on Sunday.
It's the same damn offense. I don't care if they have a new OC. It's still Andy Reid's offense, even with Matt Nagy being the offensive coordinator. Heck, he might be active on Sunday. In fact, I expect him to be active on Sunday. I think he's going to have a role immediately in the red zone in particular.
So I think what you're saying is wrong, or right, in the sense that, look, I don't think it's wrong to think that a few months ago, because I didn't care if they retained McCole Hardman, but I also 3 months ago warned you that they were taking a massive risk with a wide receiver unit that failed. All right, let's be honest, it didn't work. The risk they took at wide receiver worked so poorly that they thought, let's bring McCole Hardman back just to give ourselves a little buffer. It's fine. Look, I like one big thing about it. They're still 5-1. They're still a winning team. It wasn't holding them back from their in-game goals. These are the type of moves they're making that is similar to the Kadarius Toney move last year, which is, yeah, can they win? Could they have won a Super Bowl this year without McCole Hardman? Yes, absolutely they could. But if you're a team that is the defending Super Bowl champions and has won 2 Super Bowls in the last 5 years and has been to 3 of the last 5, if let's say you are 90% of the way there to a Super Bowl winning team, and this is 90.5%, worth it. That little bit, that extra little move, the Kadarius Toney punt return in the Super Bowl was worth the 3rd round pick alone.
Absolutely.
If McCole Hardman in a divisional round playoff game gets a jet sweep that goes to the end zone, worth it. That's the kind of team they are and the kind of draft pick compensation. But it does, in my opinion, I agree. It says something about Sky Moore. It does.
And Tony, I think it's both. Yeah, I think it's both. I lean a little more with Sky based off of the amount of routes he's getting. Kadarius Toney, people were skeptical about health and staying on the field, even though the Chiefs, as an organization, believe Kadarius Toney could be the #1 wide receiver. That obviously has not happened. But McCole Hardman was dealing with this abdominal and pelvic injury. It sounded very painful, very serious, and he gutted it out in that playoff game last year, to his credit, before he got hurt again. And then we all know he ends up with New York. Everything at this point, you have to believe he's healthy. Let's assume that he's healthy. When he was healthy last year, 4 games before the injury in Kansas City, in this same offense, 22 targets, 17 catches, 226, 5 touchdowns, and then on punt returns, he was averaging about 10 yards. So, yeah, 17 catches for 226 isn't like a crazy number. 5 touchdowns, though, in the red zone in particular. Where are they struggling right now?
Red zone.
What have we been focusing our time on so much? 1 of their last 9, I think it is, in the red zone with the Jets game and this past week's game against the Denver Broncos. McCole Hardman, I think, helps in the red zone. And not just jet sweeps. I think sometimes we assume that McCole Hardman does 35 jet sweeps. He does like 4 or 5 of them, okay?
Although, in fairness, they're not good on jet sweeps this year.
They're not.
Arrowhead Pride ran the numbers. Did you see that?
They have not
10
been good.
10 carries for 19 yards, averaging not even a full 2 yards a carry.
I think he can help them there, but I also think he helps them in the wide receiver screen game a little bit. I think he does give them also another option for a deep threat. Justin Watson's going to be hurt for a little bit, but MVS has not been able to be a deep threat. He hasn't done anything really for this football team yet this season. McCole Hardman helps him in screen game as a wide receiver, but also I think he can stretch the field a little bit from a vertical basis.
Look, I complained yesterday, and I said the Chiefs are too slow at wide receiver. This certainly seems to fit that mold. And for as much as we talk about opportunities, say Justin Ross or Sky Moore last year, those are always the crutches people used, right? When they would say, hey, Sky hasn't done anything yet because he hasn't been given an opportunity. McCole Hardman sat 3 full-ass years behind Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and like 2 other wide receivers before they got to him, Gold. And he still managed 530, 560, and 700 yards. He is not a superstar wide receiver. He is a better role-playing wide receiver than the other guys currently on the roster. That's why it's an upgrade.
Yeah, he's going to help this team. I mean, I have no doubt about that. To what extent, we're going to find out. But I think he helps this football team. And we're going to see exactly what it means for the red zone. To me, that's the area.
You think they're better in the red zone now? I mean, they're definitely going to use him down there. I think
that's where they got better with this trade. Like more. If you're asking one particular area, it's the red zone. Yeah, he can help them in the punt game, but again, I'm fine with everybody just doing a fair catch on kickoff returns and punt returns for the most part. But I think he helps them there. We'll see what the roster moves are. They have a little bit of a roster crunch now because reports are they're going to bring in, we'll talk about Frank Clark in 20 minutes, but Frank Clark's probably coming back. Danan Hughes coming back this week. And maybe it's as simple as Montrell Washington just gets cut, unfortunately, for him.
Malik Herring seems like he's on watch. Is Justin Ross on watch?
Possibly. Justin Watson's interesting to me from an IR perspective. Andy Reid yesterday at noon.
That was before he got McCole Hardman.
Right, but they had to know they were getting close. But at noon yesterday, he said they were not putting him on IR. Now, things change. Nothing requires him to not put him on IR just because he said it. But that would be one way to free up a roster spot immediately. But based off of the comments yesterday, which is all I'm going to base it off of because that was point blank from the head coach, he said they're not putting Justin Watson on IR.
I would probably reconsider that stance.
Yeah.
Buy myself 4 weeks and then figure it out from there. But if they want to wait a little bit, Washington obviously is a logical move. McCole Hardman, Dave Tobe used to have glowing things to say about McCole Hardman as a punt returner. I remember the exact quote in which he said he was the closest thing he's had to Devin Hester since the time he's been in the NFL. So he likes McCole Hardman as a returner. And honestly, I like McCole Hardman better than anybody that's been returning the ball
Recently, yeah.
Recently, sure.
Yeah. Look, by the way, if you're McCall Hardman, you got to be thrilled. Much like we'll talk about Frank, but if you're McCall Hardman, you weren't getting any playing time in New York. That thing backfired. It was the only team really that gave you a contract was the Jets.
And he found out just how quickly the league didn't want him.
You thought you were going to play with Aaron Rodgers this year, and you guys were going to have a great year. Rodgers gets hurt right away. You weren't going to pass Allen Lazard or Randall Cobb on the depth chart, clearly. I think he had a couple snaps this past week for the Jets, but he was never going to be a factor. He basically requested a trade a week or so ago, and he goes back to his old team. I mean, if you're him, you got to love the landing spot. You're comfortable here. You know how they're going to utilize you, and you couldn't have asked for a better outcome considering how things were trending if you were McCall Hardman. I'll tell you this, though. I know the deadline is not till Halloween, 31st. I think they're done with significant moves. Maybe they go and find some depth piece later at a corner or something like that. But I think these are the moves they're going to make, man. Brett Veach is bringing back McCall Hardman. He's bringing back Frank Clark, according to multiple reports. I know Carrington's reporting the physical today. Heck, Frank Clark himself basically said he's coming back on social media.
He said Denver was cool. I love horses and mountains.
Yeah. Okay, and then
was tweeting about Kansas City.
And they're basically getting a midseason acquisition in Charles Omenihu, even though he was an off-season signing because he's coming back from the 6-game suspension. I think the moves this week are really all they're going to do that's notable. And for those that are saying, well, they can still go trade for a wide receiver. I'm not against it, but also at some point, Cody, you can't have 10 wide receivers on the roster. We're already just talking about who are they cutting just to add McCall Hardman into the picture here. So if you think they're still going to go trade, and by the way, DeAndre Hopkins, 3rd-round pick, no thank you. Absolutely not.
That was the one Pro Football Focus floated out yesterday.
Absolutely not. But I don't think we can't. You're not going to have 13 wide receivers on the roster. I love it. Just like, well, just add another one.
They're done.
They would have to cut like 2 of them.
They're done at wide receiver, and they're probably done at defensive lineman, right? I mean, they've gotten good production from a sack perception on that line right now. I assume you're probably right. I don't know what else other moves there are to make. I am a little surprised that Brett Veach went with the let's get the band back together, the players who left, like you had mentioned, because they did that. The run it back team, that was the whole damn team came back. More than you would think came back. But I was a little surprised to see Frank Clark in this, but I think they're done. The 2 things we thought they needed were another defensive line depth piece, hello Frank Clark, and another maybe wide receiver or weapon that was in there. So unless they're going to trade away Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like Nate Taylor at The Athletic suggested, maybe their only player that would logically go away, what else are they moving for? As of this morning, Trent McDuffie is the #1 rated corner, according to Pro Football Focus, in all of the NFL. And they also have L'Jarius Sneed, one of the better corners in the NFL. They're not looking for secondary help. Their safeties have played really well. Where else would they be looking for help? Barring some sort of injury over the next 12 days, somebody on the offensive line or somebody on the defensive line goes down, I don't really see a move that makes sense for the Chiefs. Here's the truth. They didn't have that much money to finagle this year because they couldn't get the long-term extension done with Chris Jones. I think that's part of the reason familiar faces are back. This is as cheap as you can. Get those 2 positions in your building who already know your system. It's as cheap as you can possibly do it. Frank Clark, when he officially signs in a couple days, it's probably going to be for league minimum. They are barely paying McCall Hardman, and if he doesn't meet certain incentives, they'll pay him even less at the end of this thing. And they only had a handful of dollars to rub together anyway because the Chris Jones deal never got done. That's why they were put in this position. That's why they're done making moves.
Yeah, I think so. Wide receiver-wise, there's also just not a ton of options out there. I mean, realistic options. Yeah, maybe the Titans at some point are willing to move DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm not. If a 3rd-round pick is what it takes, I'm not willing to do it. Plus, remember, he's under contract for 2 years, so it has ramifications beyond just this year. Hollywood Brown is the name that everybody had really been keying in on a little bit because it seems like he will get moved from Arizona, but I think that's out of the picture now. And KJ Osborne was another name some people were floating out from the Minnesota Vikings that could be available at some point in time. Jerry Jeudy, obviously, Michael Pittman Jr. I think these are the moves the Chiefs are making. It doesn't require really anything draft capital-wise other than a swap. And for those that want to freak out and nerd out on the comp pick formula, maybe it impacts the 5th-round comp pick, but you guys can stress about that. I'm not going to. And that's about it.
Also, being a little bit older in age, DeAndre Hopkins is 31 right now. So being tied in for a couple more years, who knows when his body starts to fail a little bit more.
Has he been productive at all this year? I'll tell you one thing I haven't paid attention to because we warned DeAndre of this, which was, hey, man, the second you take that deal from Tennessee,
last couple weeks he's been all right.
I'm not going to be paying any attention to what you do anymore because you are a non-factor to the contending teams in the AFC. we don't care what you do because it doesn't mean anything in the long run. 27 catches for
Yeah.
376 yards,
he's been all right.
0 touchdowns.
Remember that offense, though, they don't. I mean, that's just not an explosive offense to begin with. I mean, he's been fine.
He's essentially been Rashee Rice. I mean, how far off are those numbers from Rashee Rice? Is probably about 100 more yards, I guess. So quite a bit more. But
he's been fine. I mean, he was targeted 13 times in the last game, which is wild. But against not the last game. I'm sorry. 2 games this year he was targeted double. The last game he was only targeted 5 times. The game in London. But
what's your guess for the final? Just real quick on McColl, since we were talking about it. We don't think they're going to make any more moves. What's your guess for the final stat line for McColl Hardman the rest of the way?
Yeah.
This is a really fun game because he essentially has 0 catches for 0 yards this year as a New York Jets member through 6 weeks.
1 catch for 6 yards. That's it.
One? That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I thought I was being a bit sarcastic.
3 targets this year, 1 catch for 6 yards. He's basically been a healthy scratch almost every week, with the exception of the Philadelphia game this past week. And then when they played at Dallas, he had 1 catch for 6 yards. And remember, that's the game they lost 30-10.
Based on his career average in Kansas City, he should finish the year with 407 yards and 3 touchdowns. Anybody think he's getting that?
I was going to say 400 is probably the over-under.
I'm going to go
for
350.
I'm going to say 300 yards, but 4 touchdowns. I do think he's going to be a factor in the red zone and get in the end zone a couple times. In fact, I'd rather make a bet on, if you told me McCall Hardman was active on Sunday, I'd rather make a bet on McCall Hardman to find the end zone than Sky Moore to find the end zone.
Show bet? Is that what we're going to do?
It's not available yet, though. He's not on the board yet. But yes, I would rather,
wait a
if
day.
I had a choice between the two. I don't know if it's a bet I'm making, but if I had a choice between the two, yes, I would feel more. I just think I truly believe red zone is where McCall Hardman is going to help this team the most.
We talked about that when McCall Hardman got hurt last year, which was, look, we never denied that McCall had flaws and he was a limited player, but you and I talked about him a lot like he was MVS. I know what McCall Hardman does. I'm fine with what McCall Hardman does. He fills a role. But we did talk about the one thing McCall Hardman's done his entire NFL career, find the end zone. He's only played in 62 career games. He's found the end zone 18 times. I mean, he finds the end zone as much as like elite level wide receivers at this stage. He's finishing with, like, when you consider the number of snaps he plays, he's a 4 or 5 touchdown guy every single year in the NFL. That's impressive for a player who was not ever the 1, 2, what was he, like the 4th option pretty much the entire time he was in Kansas City? He was consistently behind, at the very least, Tyreek and Travis Kelce the entire time he was here. And I imagine that there was pretty much always a third person who was taking more targets away than he was. So, I mean, he's been relatively productive. I didn't know what the
we'll see.
The
The question will be, can he capture what he was doing while he was healthy last season? Because when he was healthy, we mentioned the numbers: 5 touchdowns, 226 yards for the 4 games before his injury a year ago. He was trending in a very nice direction. People were starting to talk about him a little bit differently. Before last season, everybody said, oh, McCall Hardman has no chance of coming back, right?
Yeah.
Then he started to perform well in season. People are like, well, maybe they will bring him back. And then he got hurt, and, of course, he ended up being a free agent, and really the only team that offered him anything was the Jets. What was a 1-year, $4 million contract? And, again, he's just essentially been on the bench all year.
He was on pace last year to be a 700-yard receiver with 8 touchdowns for the Chiefs before he got hurt. I mean,
I feel like he can get to 400.
Season.
Yeah. Some people have been saying on the 913-586-7610, the text line, that they should just cut MVS. Guys, maybe in the offseason, that's in play. It's not happening in season. Like, in the offseason, because of the way the contract, we thought the day MVS was signed, everybody thought there's a good chance he wasn't going to play out the full 3 years, just based off of the contract. But in season, that's not happening. He signed a 3-year, $30 million contract. Only 15 of it is guaranteed. This year, he is making, $11 million or so. Next year, they could cut him and only have a $2 million dead cap. There's a very good chance he gets cut in the offseason. They're not cutting him in season, nor should they, by the way. I don't care how ineffective he has. They should not cut him in season. Absolutely not. And it's not happening.
People are real down on MVS, aren't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, I get why they're down on him.
But here's
that's
the thing.
fair.
Players who struggle, they can't all just be cut. You can just cut them all.
Yeah, in season, that's just ludicrous. It's not happening in season. The only wide receivers I could see getting cut in season would be, like, a thing is they could sneak him back on the practice squad, would be a Justin Ross type or somebody like that. That's it. Richie James is on IR. He's not counting against your 53 right now. Justin Watson is hurt, and he's been a reliable.
Sky Moore instead.
Yeah, also not happening. Year 2 of his rookie contract, not happening.
Although I will say this, you can start wondering what his length of time is here in Kansas City.
Well, that's different than saying now.
If they draft a wide receiver relatively high next year, or sign a free agent wide receiver, or do both, then you can start asking is there the surprise cut casualty of the training camp for Sky, but no, he's going to be on this team this year. Quit trying to get rid of all the wide receivers. Right now, they just need all of them to play cohesively, and they need somebody who offers them one more flexible option in the unit to try to be better. I know that it seems like we've had this conversation like 8 times. I understand the frustration with the wide receivers. I was worried about them before the season. Now they're not very good based on the way the season's gone, and I would have liked them to be more aggressive in the offseason. But perspective does matter here a little bit. They are still, like, by most metrics, one of the most efficient offenses in the entire NFL.
Still a top 10 offense.
Points per game, they're 9th. They actually rank better in some of the advanced statistics across the board for analytics. DVOA says they're the 6th best offense in football. And so I'm not saying that they don't have inherent flaws. They do. But good news is for you, if they're the 7th best offense this year and all of a sudden they're the 2nd best defense this season, then it'll be okay. Because in a postseason game, when crunch time hits and Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, it'll probably be fine. It turns out that guy will probably get you a
Sometimes people act like it's a fancy football roster. They're like, you suck this week.
Like
we're cutting you. And as
league.
if there's no repercussions for doing that. And you'll just go pick someone up off the waiver wire that can help you in your fantasy football team. It's not exactly the same thing for an
just
actual
go snag
NFL
Zach
team.
Evans off the bench.
It's not Madden.
Yeah, it's not Madden. It's not fantasy football. The trade for McCall Hardman, wow, I'm surprised that they ended up doing it. It does make sense, and there's really no downside to that. What's the downside? Less playing time for Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney? Is that a downside right now?
We've been asking for that. Anyway, all of us have been actively asking for that. So.
It shouldn't impact Rashee Rice whatsoever, in my opinion.
If it affects him,
that's when I'll have a
mad.
problem. Yeah. But it shouldn't. Plus, Justin Watson is going to be hurt for a couple weeks. Even though they said they're not going to put him on IR, he still might miss 2 weeks. But let's be honest. If Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore were performing at the level they thought 3 months ago that they would, we would not be sitting here today talking about McCall Hardman coming back to Kansas City. That's just to me reality.
Yes, most likely. Or Travis Kelce just stay healthy the entire year. And we spent more time talking about Travis Kelce's dating life at portions of the year. He's played great. No question about that. I did see Badu Diggs.
That's
a little more
report.
privacy.
Him and Taylor Swift in more of a gated community, a little more privacy. That I saw multiple reports. Saw the photos of the house.
I think they made a point of saying, like, he bought it, they didn't buy it together.
That's fine.
Good for Travis.
I mean, it's
honestly,
a gorgeous
stop
home.
stalking the man to his house. It's got like a cliff,
like
dude.
Was it like a $6
and
million
a mini
home?
golf course.
$5.5 million or $6 million home.
Looked incredible. Not gonna lie. I could understand why you would probably want some more privacy if you're Travis Kelce in the middle of dating one of the single biggest stars on the planet. Leave the man alone. Could you imagine, Gold, if you got into let's just say you got into a relationship next week, you started dating someone that got serious, and then we made you. Every day, we got to follow you around on your dates and see how you handled those dates. Snap photos of the
Hidden
level
cameras.
Yeah, snap photos of the level of PDA you were like. And the early part of dating is already hard enough. You're just trying to get like a feel for the vibe of how this works anyway. Then in addition to it,
it'd be brutal.
You got people
now,
showing
look,
up to the front of your house.
It'd be brutal. Now, he knew what he was getting himself into. I don't think he's, Taylor, we're talking about Taylor Swift here. One, he's already a celebrity himself, and then you go and 100 times that with Taylor Swift. So he knew what he was getting himself into.
I know, but still don't probably hate privacy.
Whoever Travis Kelce's realtor is feeling pretty good today, I would imagine. Feeling pretty
decent commission on that,
not
probably.
too bad. All right, coming up next, though, it's not just McCall Hardman coming back. I'm excited for Frank Clark coming back to KC. We'll discuss what it actually means for the Chiefs, and every Chargers-Chiefs game has a similar theme. We'll dive into that next.
Cody and Gold, brought to you.
who put that out again yesterday, reminding us of the unbelievable sound bites you get from Frank Clark, who by all accounts is back in KC today. Carrington, I know, was reporting that a physical will take place today. Frank Clark essentially on his own Twitter account said he was coming back. He had the Rasheed Wallace photo with the championship belt and everything, and every indication that he's going to sign back with Kansas City as long as the physical goes well today. And he's an all-time quote, and I hope we get Frank Clark at a podium very, very soon. Very soon.
Yeah, and by the way, if he is on a podium, we will carry it live right here on your official broadcast partner for the Kansas City Chiefs, 610 Sports Radio. And Drew, just as a quick tip, you're gonna want the dump button handy. There is at least a 60-65% chance of needing it. We once ended an interview with Frank Clark early because we had run out of available seconds to dump after his third curse word. I think it was F-bomb for the most part. After the third one, we're like, our producer at that time was like, hey, you gotta tell Frank bye. You gotta tell Frank goodbye. We can't keep him on the air anymore. I was like, all right, we'll see you later, Frank. It's been nice seeing you. But if you think the podium would somehow stop him from doing that, the answer is it won't. Are you looking for more Frank Clark?
I was.
There's so much good Frank Clark.
I just don't know which ones are edited already and which ones aren't, though, so I want to be careful.
So now you're afraid of playing it now that we were talking about it?
But anyway, the point is...
If it's in our folder, it's
we have some available dumps, so if you want to, fire away.
Just take a risk,
I love that he's coming back, though. The on-the-field stuff, limited, maybe practice squad even, limited, save him for the postseason, rotate in. Maybe he takes some of the Malik Herring snaps, even though Malik Herring's played pretty well. That's what this is, but he's an unbelievable leader in the locker room. And we saw when you and I were up at camp a year ago in St. Joe, after every practice, Frank Clark was coaching up George Karlaftis. Well, I would like to have that influence back. Not that Chris Jones isn't doing that, but I would like to see Frank Clark back in that role. Working with Karlaftis still. Felix and Udike Uzama, absolutely. Helping Charles and Menahue can get up to speed with this defense. That role, and we know he's extremely liked in the locker room. There's no issue bringing him back there. My goodness, everybody loved him. So I think this is great. Why not? It's not going to cost you really anything, and he's a depth piece if another injury happens. And if you were wondering, what he was doing in Denver where he was a complete non-factor, motivation, all that, not worried about the motivation here.
I'm not even sure he recorded a single stat in his time in Denver. Had the stomach issues flare up, some of the stuff, but all of this is stuff we're used to dealing with. He had the stomach issues last year and still managed to play 15 games. The year before, still managed to play 14 games. The year before, still managed to play 15 games. Yeah, sometimes you wonder whether or not Frank Clark's going to leave in the middle of the third quarter due to stomach issues. This is one of the absolute lowest risk moves of all time. More importantly, I think I just like him back for the personality stuff. I'll be honest.
That's part of it.
I'm not exactly like if you said, hey, like I just asked you the McColl stat line. You're like, what's the final stat line for Frank Clark? Like, I don't know, maybe a sack or two.
But here's the thing, Cody,
but I'll take the risk that he shows up in an AFC title game and gets one pass rush snap.
That's the thing. It's not about whether or not he ends up recording a sack in the regular season or anything. It's in the postseason. If there's one of his 8 snaps that he performs in, if he gets one pressure, as you said, one sack, one batted pass, whatever it may be, or one week that there's a week that Karlaftis has a hamstring injury and you need to bump his snap count up, that game that he performs well, that's all you're asking for here from Frank Clark.
I feel like, too, the fact that you guys brought it up, the developmental assistance, essentially, that he brings in the veteran presence in the locker room, for paying him little to no money, it's a move that, for the Chiefs, makes complete and total sense because of he's liked in the locker room, and also he has the relationship with guys like George and Felix to help continue their development, if you will.
I will say this:
Chris isn't doing that already. Obviously,
you made your star defensive player happier. He did nothing but spend the entire offseason talking about how he's trying to get Frank Clark back. Gold. He desperately wanted his guy Frank back. Honestly, I think that a lot of it is what Clark probably realized, because he was on contending teams for Seattle. He got to Denver. He's a 30-year-old player. He's made plenty of money. He's probably only got a few years left in this league, if that, right? Because of like the injury stuff, and it's just you can feel his career slowly winding down. He doesn't want to be on some loser stuck in Denver with a team that isn't winning. Even if he's not playing that much here, and I don't think he'll play that much. I think he probably just like the boost in spirits he'll get by existing back in Kansas City is exactly what he was looking for. Not to mention any post-game soundbite.
Well, yeah, this was in 2021. So this was a couple years ago. I think this was Fesco was on the field for this one. I believe that's this interview with Frank Clark.
Nah, I'm a champion. That's all that matters. I said it a few days ago that, I wasn't going to let that happen. We put a mindset in our whole defense that we wasn't going to let them run the ball on us. We knew the only way they was going to win the game was run the ball. The quarterback not good enough to win the game passing, and we exposed all that. Anytime you run for 80 yards, you call yourself the leading running back. They call themselves, they hype Henry up and do all this for him, man. Say what they're going to do to us. Say we the 26th ranked defense in the league. And all we do is continue to prove to them who the baddest on the planet are.
You shut him down today. How did you guys do that?
Because we the baddest motherfucker on the planet.
Now you got one more in you to win it for Andy. How important is it to win for Andy?
It's more important to win that for our owner, Clark Hunt Trophy. We're going to win it for, I said more important, sorry, scratch that.
I got what you mean, man.
Man, it's more important just for us as a team, not just for Andy as a coach, no disrespect, but for the team. All that matters is the team, and that's all we've been thriving on all season is the team. Team first, everything else second.
And you were hurt, man, like the beginning of the year, week 11, you finally get healthy and get out here. How much is like redemption for you to go, I knew I could go out there and play like that?
Because I know I am. I know what I'm capable of doing. At the end of the day, I told him. After week 6, I told him what was going on with my body. My body was breaking down. I didn't know what was going on, You just pray everything goes right. I go out, get checked by doctors. My doctors tell me I shouldn't even play for the rest of the season. They tell me I need to get surgery, stop playing, before I hurt something, down the road for a longer term. At the end of the day, man, I trusted my doctors here at the Chiefs. I trusted everything that was telling me. Like I said, Rick Burkhardt.
He went on and on from there. That was after the AFC title game beating the Tennessee Titans. It was a very cold day, if you couldn't tell from hearing both of them talk there. A very cold day out at Arrowhead.
He's been the key source of some of the best post-game stuff in the entire Chiefs postseason, right?
That wasn't even the best stuff at all, but that was just some of it.
I like Frank is just back to hang out with Chris Jones.
Fine.
If it's that alone, cool. Again, what's the risk in this move? I mean, it's not that they haven't performed at all from a defensive line perspective, but they could use a few more pressures here or there. We all admitted they could use some depth.
Yeah, someone's right, though.
I mean, you're back. Frank Clark back. Cool.
Get him available for the Chiefs-Broncos game next week so he can go up against the Broncos, who he just again you want to talk about
Zach Russ.
I mean,
he didn't say anything bad about Denver. He just said
but when he got there, he had that press conference and he was talking about the rivalry, and he was saying, "Hey, I don't call it a rivalry. We got to start winning. I've been on the other side. We got to start winning here." And a lot of Broncos fans didn't like that, even though he was correct. And then so he said that while in a Denver Broncos uniform, and then 3 months later,
back with the Chiefs.
Again, he's expected to sign with the Chiefs. Not official yet, but every indication is that he's going to be back with the Chiefs today.
When it becomes official, we'll let you know. Meanwhile, maybe the only thing they have close to a divisional rivalry right now is the Chargers. I think we should all probably just buckle in and accept one very simple fact about this game. Every single Chiefs-Chargers game is exactly the same, and this one will be no different. It will be some 3-point game in the fourth quarter decided by a single drive in which the Chiefs will win either offensively or defensively that eventually leads them to victory. Their games have a very similar vibe. They are usually heavyweight fights where teams trade blows for a little while. Things slow down in the third quarter, and then we start getting into the fourth quarter when it's crunch time, and one team usually comes up with the big play, that team being the Chiefs. That's how every single Chargers game has gone.
There's probably no greater example when we always say, hey, teams play up to competition or down. There's probably not a greater example than the Chargers playing up when they play the Chiefs. It's their best games of the season. It really is. I mean,
consistently,
you're right.
Yeah.
It's not just last year one game, but the last two games have been 3-point margins. The two prior to that were 6-point margins. In fact, the Chargers just play close games to begin with, let alone against Kansas City. All 5 Chargers games, they've already had a bye. All 5 of their games this year have been decided by one score, including the Monday night game we just saw them lose to the Dallas Cowboys. In 9 games against the Chargers, Patrick Mahomes, all but 2 have been one-score games. 4 have been by a field goal or less. So typically closer games. The Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites right now, by the way.
That seems high, doesn't it?
In the game.
You're taking the other side? You're taking the Chiefs to cover?
I'm going to take the Chiefs to cover, but I'm not betting it yet because I think there's a chance that the number goes down again. Like I think I might be able to get it at 5, if not better, by the time we get to kickoff. The Chiefs are the healthier team. The Chiefs had the mini bye week. The Chargers are not healthy, and they're coming off a game on Monday night. Yes, it was a home game, but still, they're coming off a game on Monday night, short week. But they will play I'm sure they will play their best game of the season. It's what the Chargers typically do against Kansas City. We say that a lot about teams and giving their best shot when they play the Chiefs. The Chargers are the best example of that.
They just consistently play Kansas City tough. That's all. In the time in which they've been in the league, that is the team that I was always like dreading if they had to play in a playoff game, because I'm like, oh God, it's going to come down to the wire. There's not going to be just some it's got to be a photo finish with these two teams a lot. Because even some of the ones you're talking about, if you're close, if you really dive into those games, they were closer than that till the bitter end too. It just seems like for whatever reason, Staley, and the one that they won, you have to remember, the one they won was when Staley did all the stuff he does now. They just got them all. They just got them all. They got all the fourth downs. That's the risk. That's the risk of taking on the Chargers, is that as much as we mock him because he doesn't have any kind of filter when it comes to going for it on fourth down, going for these fakes, he's just aggressive. It's cost him because he has no filter on it. He doesn't have a feel for the game about when and when not to do it. The game he beat the Chiefs against, he went for it on 4 separate occasions and got all 4. That's the risk of taking on this team, is that if it just happens to be the day they're getting all the 4th and 2s right from an execution standpoint, then they're going to be tough to beat because they're going to keep these drives going.
That's true. Justin Herbert right now, though, is just not sharp whatsoever. And I'm not even talking big picture of where he should be in the rankings.
He's not throwing picks, but
he's
the rest
not
of it
sharp. He's misfiring. And really, their only offense right now is Keenan Allen. And we know Keenan Allen's had some huge games historically against the Chiefs, but that's their offense. Quentin Johnston, the rookie out of TCU, who I would have loved the Chiefs to have drafted, hasn't done a damn thing. No. And there's no Mike Williams there. You would think there'd be an opportunity for Quentin Johnston. There's nothing there.
Joshua Palmer instead.
Joshua Palmer, but it's really Keenan Allen. Anything down the field. And they got some opportunities down the field, and Herbert missed it against a banged-up Cowboys secondary. The Chiefs secondary, I think, will do a better job overall in terms of not allowing some of the double moves to be effective. But
what's hard about that is the same stat I gave you in the opening thing. If you only have one wide receiver to really fear, Trent McDuffie currently ranks as the best corner in all of football, according to Pro Football Focus. And it was L'Jarius Sneed who shut down Justin Jefferson. Where's your out? One of those two guys is going to be on you. One of those two players is going to be on your number one wide receiver. What are you doing? Throwing it to Joshua Palmer the whole game? It's that, or it's got to be the Austin Eckler game.
He's back. He's back. This be his second game back. He struggled near trying to get in the end zone. Look, I just think the Chargers defensively, and I know you've talked about their defense the last couple of years, but it's a lot of name recognition, and that's it at this point.
No performance.
That's where they're at. I just don't think that the Chargers have a whole lot of room for growth this season. You know, we talk before the season, roster-wise, actually should be one of the better teams based off of the roster. But some injuries now and underachieving. It's a must-win game for the Chargers, so I'm not saying the Chiefs are going to blow them out. But this is a game where, other than history, like you were saying, and how these games typically go, this is another one of those where you look and you're like, man, this Chiefs have extra time. The way that Chargers are playing, there's no reason the Chiefs shouldn't be able to handle the Chargers on Sunday afternoon.
In the last 3 years, is the Los Angeles Chargers the most overrated unit in the entire NFL? All I hear about is how good their defense is. They consistently rank like 27th.
Well, that just applies to their whole team,
I'm
right?
just tired of hearing
Doesn't
about
apply
their
to their
defense.
whole team. I mean, their whole team has been the offseason darlings. SI for many years, or whatever publication you want to throw out, has picked them as the AFC surprise team or the AFC favorite some years, believe it or not. It's calmed down a little bit here in the last year with the Chiefs' success. But that's a team that when people look at their roster and their quarterback, people have thought they should be much better. Instead, they're a 9 to 10 win team typically.
I haven't properly looked up their defense until just now. I knew that they were 23rd in points per game allowed in the NFL right now. Did you know that they are dead last in passing yards against? They're letting up almost 300 yards a game passing this season. They're dead last in the NFL in passing yards allowed this year.
Yeah,
they just cut their core. They just traded J.C. Jackson back, and they still can't stop anybody.
Yeah, I think Mahomes' passing total, if you're wondering, is like 278.5.
They're averaging letting up 289.
So 278.5 is Mahomes' number. If you're just going off of the 9 games, Mahomes actually only gone over that number 3 times that he's played, the Chargers. So, we think it's an automatic, 278, but he actually hasn't gone over that number since he's with the Chargers all that often. Now, he did last November, 329-yard performance and 3 touchdowns last time out against the Chargers.
They're not a good passing defense. And before you're like, okay, well maybe the Chargers have faced they're letting up 289 passing yards. Maybe they've really been torched. Okay, yeah, Tua got him, right? just like Tua's gotten a number of teams, and Kirk Cousins got some yards on him. They've also played the Titans, the Raiders, and it's not like Dak put up 400 on him. And they're still the worst passing defense in yards allowed per game and one of the worst scoring defenses in the NFL. They're in the bottom third. This team, but all that being said, and I still think it'll be a 3-point game. It'll be like Butker putting the ball through the uprights with 13 seconds left to go on the clock in the fourth quarter to put them up 3. I think that they are not just better than Chargers. I think there's like a sizable gap between the two of them now that we've seen them each play a third of their season. I just assume it'll be down to the wire.
We'll talk to Danan Hughes, former Chiefs wide receiver. He'll be on the call for the Chiefs Radio Network Sunday afternoon. Get his thoughts on McCall Hardman edition, Frank Clark coming back, and what he expects for the Chargers game. But in the meantime, Drew, let's get to it.
Trash of the day.
All right. We're going to Lithuania, actually Spain, but a Lithuanian man for this one.
Lithuania?
Yep. We haven't gone there before, I don't believe.
I don't want to say for sure, but I don't think we've ever discussed Lithuania. No.
I don't know. Have you ever been at a restaurant where someone had like a medical emergency or anything? Either of you,
No.
fortunately, haven't been in that situation.
You ever had to give someone a Heimlich
not like the
maneuver
scene,
in
not
any of my
like
serving
the
days?
scene from Mrs. Doubtfire where you got to none of that. Nobody's choking on some shrimp or anything like that. Okay, good. What if you saw someone having what you think was a heart attack?
I'd be very concerned.
You'd be concerned. You would think they're having a heart attack.
Sure.
Well, not if this gentleman was involved. You'd say, oh, this guy's faking it. Because it turns out a Lithuanian man has been arrested in Spain for allegedly faking heart attacks at 20 different restaurants around the country in order to avoid paying the tab. This unnamed 50-year-old reportedly scammed at least 20 eateries, most of them in Spain's one of the regions in Spain, theatrically faking a heart attack. After ordering food and drinks, he would put on an outrageous theatrical performance, clutching his chest, pretending to faint on the floor. The scam worked like a charm until one owner said, no, this is an act, and started contacting other local restaurants, photos of him warning them not to fall for his heart attack routine. Last month, he went to a restaurant, enjoyed some seafood, a few shots of whiskey. The bill was like $37. When the waiter left the table,
a heart attack for $37?
Yeah. When the waiter left the table, he got up and tried to leave, but he was stopped and notified he had to cover the bill. He was upset. The scammer said he was going to get money from his hotel room. The staff did not let him leave. It was at this point he started faking the heart attack. So one owner said, you've been faking, and now they're all aware of the act. And there's a hilarious photo of him on the ground.
That doesn't look like somebody having a heart attack.
It's not like he just had the heart attack. He tried to get out of it by leaving, and then out of nowhere was like, all right, well, I got to try it again.
So they didn't fall for the performance. Now, this is risky on the restaurant's part because you want to talk about a lawsuit if you weren't sure.
Yeah, if you're wrong.
Because it said the restaurant did not fall for it. Instead of calling an ambulance, they called police. And they said, hey, we need the police. Could you imagine if he actually this one time was having the heart attack? So they're very fortunate.
They got kind of lucky on that one because, like, so when I worked in restaurants, I worked for a restaurant that was like part of a restaurant group that you got like a card, so you get a discount. At other restaurants like it. This restaurant's no longer exists. I don't even feel bad. I don't remember the name.
Casey Hops or something restaurant.
Yeah,
group
it's like
or
that.
something.
It wasn't that group, but the same thing. So went out to eat using the card, and the person's like, "Hey, I think this is a fake." I'm like, "A fake? You think I make a fake restaurant card?" The owner of the restaurant accused me of making a fake restaurant card and then cut it at the table like I was held it hostage, like I was some sort of general. I'm like, ma'am, this is a very, 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 very real thing. I can't believe you're accusing me of faking this for what? $27 and a couple of margaritas? I'm not going to do it for that. If I'm faking a discount, she kept the card. I had to go get a whole new one.
But you didn't like report her or like?
Oh, I made her give me the discount, and I complained to the.
Yeah.
I think I like sent an email to the group, like, "Hey, this person's insane."
So
why would I make this up? What a weird thing to make up that would be.
So in the story, it also mentions once police arrived with this guy that they knew was faking the heart attack, he tried to claim to the police that he needed medical assistance. Unfortunately for him, one of the police officers recognized him as well from run-ins at other restaurants. So he was well known, and he's known, notorious among restaurant owners. This all started back in November of 2022.
Look, the only way
he gets away. Most of the time, he still got away with skipping the bill, but a lot of the owners have wised up.
Only time I'm faking a heart attack is if, like, let's say somebody said, you know, I say, hey, how much is this bottle of wine? And they said, you know, like a number that you thought was 100 and instead it was 1,000. $1,000 bottle of wine, I might fake a heart attack. Get the hell out of there.
I don't know, man.
But that's it's got to be like a certain bill length where you're like, no, ain't no way.
Also,
It's not
real
going
quick
down
question,
like that. Not
legit
$37.
question, like, you're having a heart attack, and I'm not saying it's never happened at a restaurant. Obviously, it has. But the assumption of like, oh, don't worry about the bill. Like, yeah, if it's $27, the restaurant's not going to track you down. But if it was $1,000 bill, if we found out you were healthy and fine and you're doing good, I would still track you down a week later and be like, hey, man, there was $1,000 bill, not 20 or 30 bucks. But if it was $1,000 bill, you still should have to. Your heart attack doesn't get you out of that as long as you lived.
And they didn't cause it? Wasn't
If
like
it's
a
like-
food allergy?
Yeah.
If you actually
issue?
had a heart attack,
Like, if
I
it's
think you should let me off the hook if I
not for
actually had a heart
$1,000
attack.
tab.
You know?
If it's like $100 or less, no, just what are we doing here? But if it was $1,000 bottle of wine on the tab, like you were at Capitol Grill and you just went all out, and you say the bill's like $1,800 for you and your buddies, and one of yours actually had a true medical emergency but lived and was fine, you don't just get to not pay the $1,800
I think
eventually.
I'd like off the hook
Not
if I
right
have
that
an
moment.
actual heart
Not
attack.
right that moment. But eventually, I'm still tracking you down. Not for $100, but $1,800. Yeah, sorry. You're supposed to just give away stuff.
Say this: if you made an online reservation, they're going to find you.
Well, I told you what happened with me. I was at I won't name the restaurant, a semi-local restaurant. This was maybe a month ago. And a lot of them now have, you can scan the app and pay through Apple Pay through their app. Like there's a restaurant in town that has their own app. You scan the QR code, it goes to their app, and you pay. Okay? So with some friends, I pay, we get up, we leave. 5 minutes later, I have a phone number, and I'm like, this is weird. I answered it because it was like, I could tell, I think it was
Something was
the
funny.
restaurant. They called, they're like, yeah, we were just checking. The waiter, if we don't believe, you didn't pay your bill. I'm like, yo, I did with Apple Pay. They're like, oh, we really apologize. He's brand new, yada yada yada. But they thought I walked down the tab.
They
It's
thought
because
you
I paid.
skipped a check.
I paid through the Apple Pay thing. Look, if you're the restaurant and you're going to offer the ability for me to scan the QR code,
You might want to tell your staff.
yeah, you can't be accusing people from walking out of the tab.
I've had people walk on the tab, dude. It's the worst.
Well, yeah, it sucks. It's terrible. Don't do that.
I mean, if you serve for any length of time, it's happened, but it's the
I can't
worst.
I can't imagine doing that intentionally. I'm not saying it's never. Someone's probably done it on accident, like truly, but like I don't know how you intentionally can be okay and not like think that. How do you do that?
I don't know.
I've done it on purpose once.
What?
On purpose?
Whoa,
Yes.
Here we go. There we go.
No. Were
We
you
don't
a
know-
kid?
How old were you?
Do we have time?
Yeah, sure.
We'll make time for this.
2020, 21?
What, dude? Oh wait.
It's not that long
Hold on,
ago.
when you were 21 or in 2020, 21?
No, I was
Oh, okay.
21. I was 20. I was in college.
I was like 2 years ago. True.
And this is not a okay, it is a restaurant, but it's not it was a Denny's. And let me tell you,
Denny's
So
some
what?
money.
You had that Grand Slam breakfast.
let me tell you,
and you
no,
walked out.
we went at night. I had breakfast at night. Like we went at it was like 9 o'clock at night. I was like,
Sure.
all right, well, let's just go to Denny's. The service was terrible. We didn't have a waiter come to our table for like 20 minutes. And we asked multiple times. She said she came and was like, I can't get your food or drinks. Just give me a second. 10 minutes later, what do you guys want to drink? We got what we wanted to drink, ordered food. 30 minutes later, still no food. Finally got the food. And
You ate it.
we ate it, and we
It's good enough to eat.
and at this point, it's like we're pushing 11 o'clock here. Like we're been here for 2 hours and just finished our food, and it's like, can we have the check? And she's like, yeah, it's going to be a little bit though. It's like, all right,
I'm out of here.
So
15
you said, hey, 20 minutes.
Wow.
If you
15
want-
minutes?
If you want to allow me to pay in a 20-minute time frame, the meal is free.
Did you know
I'm
how
out.
hard it is
15
to
minutes.
make
She
money?
wasn't here, and I felt. Don't get me wrong, I felt terrible doing it. I said,
Obviously not
forget it.
terrible
I'm out.
enough.
I said, forget this. This is dumb. I'm out of here.
Obviously not that bad.
Damn.
They walked out.
Damn.
It's a
That's the second
$13
worst thing that's
little
happened
breakfast.
to a Denny's lately. The other one is the one burning down by the stadium.
Yeah. I'm surprised, Drew. I did not expect that. I did not expect that.
I've never dined and dashed.
And normally,
I have
I
not
do
either.
tip very well. I'm
Yeah.
normally a very good tipper.
I've
as
never
well.
heard anyone say the other of that, by the way.
What?
That's
that,
one of those
that I'm a
statements no
bad.
one's-
That someone's a bad tipper. Yeah.
Traditionally, I go at least 25 or 30%. Like
That's a good tipper.
tip.
Yeah.
I tip good.
You got to at least be doing 20% these days, as long as the service is good.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay.
They did
That's
not
the
get
trash
my
of the
money,
day.
nor did they get a tip.
Drew owes
Screwed on
Denny's
both
some
ends.
money. Coming up next, we'll talk some Chiefs football. McCole Hardman, what role is he going to have? We'll find out from Danan Hughes, former Chiefs wide receiver, right here on Cody and Gold.
Cody and Gold, brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete for
get Danan Hughes on the line, our Chiefs insider, of course, part of the Chiefs radio network, former Chiefs wide receiver. He joins us every Thursday. You could also hear him on Players Only a little bit later on this evening, as a matter of fact. But Danan, McCole Hardman, he's back with Kansas City. I'll be honest, I'm a little surprised this all came together, but where's the area you think he helps this team out the most?
Yeah, I was surprised too. Then I started thinking about it a little bit more and realized how it does make sense. If you think about from a position perspective, and you're adding guys during the season, we've seen this team add defensive ends. We've seen them add defensive guys, offensive linemen, et cetera. But the wide receiver, as far as a contributing wide receiver, we really hadn't seen that. And part of the reason is because it takes a while to get in sync with Patrick Mahomes. And now you have the luxury of adding to your arsenal someone who's already been down that road. So I started to understand it a little bit more, a little bit better. And I also think that it pushes the current wide receiving core. Right now, if you had to think about a weakness on this team as far as consistency and production, I'd say the wide receivers have the biggest question mark. So maybe adding McCole Hardman, who knows this system, has had success here, can push some of the other younger guys to maybe step their game up. I'm thinking about Sky Moore being the first one that comes to mind there. So I think there's more meat on the bone in regards to why you would sign McCole Hardman and what you'd expect. As far as what he can contribute, you know he knows the offense. You know there are gadget plays and aspects of this offense that were basically tailor-made for him. And then if there's a question mark at punt returner or kick returner, not that we see very many kick returns, but at punt returner specifically, you know you can plug and play him there as well. So there are multiple reasons to bring him back. I'm one of those guys, and I said it earlier this week on Fesco's show, don't go back to the ex-girlfriend you had
right.
is the reason why they were the ex. But I can also understand why you want to continue to make sure that you ensure Patrick Mahomes has as much in his arsenal as possible.
Danan, I think that this is an admittance by the Chiefs that the plan that we all knew that they were going with and was risky just didn't work the way that they had hoped. They were willing to let go of McCole Hardman because in their brains, hey, Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney, one of those two guys are going to step up and we're good. We don't need McCole Hardman filling that role because one of those two guys will eventually become a reliable weapon in this offense. I think by making this move, you're admitting that off-season plan isn't going to plan.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, let's also add in Justin Watson goes down with the injury. Like, he could have been part of that plan as well. So you have Rashee Rice, Justin Ross, still, jury's still out on what he's going to be able to contribute and how much. But right now you are down Justin Watson, who had garnered a lot of confidence from Patrick Mahomes, really stepped up his role, and the injury factors in. So I'm not sure I say it's an indictment on everybody else as much as I say, what if somebody else goes down? What if you have an injury that's sustained to someone? We know Kadarius Toney has been bitten at times. So what if somebody else goes down? Then you're down to really 2.5 guys that have had significant time in this offense. And I don't know if you want to go into the second half of the season, never mind the second third of the season that we're about to go into, with that possibility when you knew by taking a late draft pick you can go and get somebody and plug and play right away.
When you look at the wide receiver room, you mentioned Justin Watson's hurt right now. Andy Reid yesterday said he wasn't going to go to IR. I guess that could still change. We know they've had Montrell Washington returning punts at this point in time. Who do you think is the odd man out right now, though, when McCole Hardman's roster move has to happen?
Well, with Justin Watson, and I don't know, I haven't seen how long they've said he would be out, but I don't think you have to make that decision. And at that time, like, the decision could be made on its own. It could be made organically based on just how things unfold with guys and injuries. So I'm not sure you have to make that decision right now. It could be another position. There's that three-headed monster at the running back position. We know how those guys, outside of Jerick McKinnon, Isaiah Pacheco, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire have been dinged up at different times. So you may see that. I don't think it'll change much on the tight end position, but maybe the offensive line. So I don't think it has to be where you take one receiver down or knock one receiver down to put McCall Hardman in the lineup. I just think that basically how the season unfolds, who stays healthy on both sides of the ball, could factor into who's inactive at one position.
Look, Dana, it might not matter because the Chiefs' defense is so good. They could obviously have a good enough team to win a division and to win a Super Bowl. But by let's say week 18, we get through all this. We know McColl's here. Do you think we'll be looking at the worst offense in the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid era?
Ooh. What would you consider worst?
2020, probably. But that team.
No, I mean, as far as classifying worst, like, are we saying not 5,250 yards passing?
I think for me, Dana,
MVP-esque?
the worst part is like ability, like my trust in your ability to score if I only gave you 2 minutes and 2 timeouts, right? Or an ability that if the game came down to it and you had to put up 35 that day, you could. I am less confident in like those two things, and I've been in a very long time in Kansas City.
You know what? The proof is in the pudding. I mean, we haven't really shown outside of the Chicago Bears that we can put up those big numbers, over 30 points average, that we've done on multiple occasions with Patrick Mahomes as the quarterback. So as of right now, as we move into this week against the Chargers, our second divisional game, a tough foe, like I wouldn't be against what you're saying. I mean, I could see it right now, but I also know that there's an art. I mean, I looked at some of the Justin Herbert numbers and what he's done against the blitz and how successful he's been, and yet they'd love to be where we are.
Yeah.
So, I don't put a whole bunch of stock into what's worst or how bad we are at this junction of the season. I just feel like there are a lot of teams that have hit their max, that have played up to their ceiling, and they're nowhere close to where we are as far as our record and the confidence. So, like, I feel like that might be the end of the second third of the season, that we can start to entertain those things. But right now, like, I don't, and you guys have heard me say it, like, I don't care about being the best. I don't care about being the best we can possibly be. I care about winning football games, and let us be the best in week 16, 17, and into the playoffs, and I'll be cool with it.
We're talking to Danan Hughes here on Cody and Gold. Does Frank Clark help him get to that point? Every indication is he's going to be in town today, and this thing's going to happen. He's going to be coming back in some form for this football team.
Yeah, that might be the ex that I don't know if I would go back and date. And it's not an indictment on Frank Clark and his ability, his impact. I mean, he was astronomical in regards to his production, specifically in the postseason. At times when Chris Jones wasn't really a factor in the postseason, and he catapulted us to Super Bowl wins. So by no means is it an indictment on him. But I just don't know if you draft 2 consecutive drafts where you draft first-round picks at the same position, and then you go back and get a guy that you allowed to leave. Like, I just don't know why you would do that. I don't see any, chinks in the armor in regards to Felix or George at this point. Mike Dana is a guy that can play inside but also plays outside. Chris Jones, because we move him from inside to outside. Like, that's 4 guys that we actually kept on our roster that plays the exact same position as Frank. Right? So I don't know. Maybe if he's willing to come and be a practice squad / inactive guy and, break glass in case of emergency, like, I'd be okay with that, possibly. But I don't know. Like, there's not a lot of guys that can assume that role. Like being a successful veteran in the league and then being relegated to practice squad and, the tap on the shoulder each week as to whether or not you'd be active or inactive. Not everybody's built for that, especially guys that have been successful and, top 5 and postseason sacks in your career, and that's what you're relegated to here. Like, some guys might just say, you know what, I'll just stay as a free agent, stay in shape, and just call me when you need me to be active. I just don't know that Frank would be that guy that would sit behind the wings of a first-year and second-year guy and be okay with it.
Danan, you were in the league, so I'm going to ask you to judge an acting performance. You were in the league when the 1997 Snickers commercial came out that was the mispainting in the end zone that said chefs instead of Chiefs. What did you make of Andy's new bringing the ad back?
I like it, man. I don't know if you guys have heard me. We started on with Fesco and Josh doing the what's So I'm all about the throwbacks, man. The throwback Bud Light commercial with that, the chefs. I'm cool with it. Anything that brings a little light to the game and shows the personality side, like, I'm cool with it. So yeah, I'm down.
I just hope that you're able to still continue your radio gig after it appears that you're now getting into runway modeling or whatever. I saw that earlier in the week.
Hey man, you got to be diverse, man. You got to have your tentacles spread out. That's what I'm trying to do. Plus, my back was hurting afterwards, so I probably wouldn't have much of a career.
Probably from carrying cling. That's all right.
All right, man. Well, your Hawkeyes, I need the under 31.5 points in that ugly Iowa-Minnesota game. It's one of the lowest totals in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's probably a safe bet. My Hawkeyes, we just win football games, man. We don't worry about the points. We just win football games.
That's right. On the way to the college football playoff. All right, Danan Hughes, former Chiefs wide receiver. He joins us every Thursday. Be listening tonight, Players Only as well. Coming up, 6 o'clock this evening as the Chiefs get set to take on the Chargers. No, he was part of the Chiefs, what do they call the Style Lounge show or whatever it is. They do it every year, and Danan was on the runway.
If they invited you, would you do it?
Yeah, of course.
Would you walk their run?
Of course. They're not going to invite me, but of course. Yeah.
I'm just saying if they did, that's all.
Absolutely. Danan was on there. Saw a few other people we know from local media, among others. And so, yeah, that's a cool event that the Chiefs do every year.
I think the interesting part about Frank, and he's not way off here, is you already have a bunch of guys playing that position. Frank Clark has been a really limited producer in his time here. I think what's key is you've said it, and now Danan said it. I think at this point, it seems like a lot of people are hoping he'll just agree to a practice squad spot.
Yeah.
So you can buy yourself a few weeks before you can make a decision. Then at least you're not forced into, hey, we're doing Frank Clark come hell or high water. We can get our eyes on him, make sure that he's still the player we're familiar with him being, get him in a little bit of practice, and then figure out where we want to go from there.
And the Snickers commercial, man.
He's the best actor.
He's got a good acting career.
Yep.
Hey, that's great. But who are the chefs?
Rookie mistake?
Great googly moogly.
Maybe you just need a Snickers.
Maybe no one will notice.
He's got the State Farm. He's got the Snickers commercial rolling. Good for him.
Bring him back to Chef's
The Nuggies.
By the way,
he says he's not good at acting either. I think he's the
best one.
He's outstanding.
He's actually really good.
Kelsey might be the only one who's better.
Kelsey's
he's better
fantastic.
than Mahomes.
Yeah.
He's better than a lot of any other Chiefs player I can remember, at least off the top of my head. I think what's amazing is that commercial we reference to this, like people I know that gets referenced forever in this town. So obviously, from a local perspective, no problem.
It's funny. It's
not to have any issue.
It's good. It's very well done. Yeah, Frank Clark, practice squad or just an agreement basically that hey, you're going to get like 5 to 10 snaps if you're active on certain games. And if someone else gets hurt, great. Really, it's all about the postseason with this football team, and we know that's where Frank Clark thrives. So glad to see that he is coming back to Kansas City again. Supposed to have a physical today, and most people expect that to not be a problem.
I don't. Meanwhile, problems existing in other versions of the universe. Is anyone else really frustrated, once again, with the NCAA, who lost control of their entity because NIL existed, because all these states started being like, all right, look, you're not holding this thing up anymore. We're creating laws that allow this thing to happen, and you can either get in the way or not. And instead, what's happened lately is the NCAA has decided to hit the old political trail and try to force back the action into their hand. What I don't understand here is too late. You don't get to steer the car. You tried to drive it off a cliff. You tried to fight what was coming for 30 years in your own organization, and now you're like, but what if we're in charge of it? No. You've already proven a lack of ability to be in charge of this because you didn't want it to happen. You tried to fight it at every single step, and now they're trying to maintain some small little nugget of the financial pie in this situation that they don't deserve. Screw the NCAA. They don't deserve to be in charge of this now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're any closer to a conclusion. Again, we're talking about name, image, likeness. You're right. All these states have different laws. Missouri just had an update on theirs that actually gives the University of Missouri a nice advantage recruiting-wise, which allows them, they're one of the few states that allows high school seniors that have committed, in this case to Missouri, to already start collecting NIL money while they're still in high school. Now, that's a state law, right? Missouri's one of the few that allow that, and it's a big boost for Eli Drinkowitz and Missouri Tigers in terms of future recruiting. Not every state has that, but that's the issue in general. Not that they're profiting, but the issue is that each state is different, right? And so
Correct.
now, really, this is not the first hearing. There's been like 10 of them that the federal government's trying to get involved in, and whether or not there could be true federal uniform NIL laws. I think at some point we probably are going to get that. I have no idea if that's happening soon. But yes, the NCAA is heavily lobbying for this because they have no say. The states basically have said, yeah, we're a middle finger to you. We're above you on what your bylaws or whatever are for the NCAA. So we don't give a damn. And instead now, yeah, the best path for the NCAA is to try to get some federal form of NIL, which, by the way, I think that probably was always where eventually we would get. I'm not against a federal NIL,
but they want to be in charge of it.
But the NCAA, them being the push for this, really, and the driving force, I should say, for this is pretty comical just because of everything.
Yeah, they miss punishing people. They're looking for some other reason to, like, get people in trouble. They couldn't solve Kansas's problem for 6 years. Like, we can talk about it later. Bill Self said yesterday he straight up offered to sit out the entire NCAA tournament, and they didn't take him up on the deal. These are the people we want in charge. These are the people you want in charge of punishments in case somebody steps over a line. My biggest problem with this is the same thing that happens with these levels of sports all the time, which is you don't, and I think this applies to most jobs, you don't get to put a cap on what I can earn. Screw you. That's what they really want to do. Gold, they don't want to control how you're getting the money. They want to cap how much you can get. They don't like it that the Utah's backup offensive lineman is driving a brand new Ram truck. Who cares? If the kid can get it, let him.
Well, and it goes back to the whole NCAA not caring about actually not caring about college athletes, because if they cared, they would bring on a president who had collegiate experience and all that stuff. They brought in a former governor because they knew that they were going to go in this direction to court and have the federal government involved, and they wanted somebody on their side who knew the ins and outs of the federal government. There was a politician who will remain nameless who said yesterday athletes who are on scholarship shouldn't be considered employees. That would mean if you drop a pass or miss a free throw, you could be fired and or lose your scholarship. Isn't that already kind of happening without being called that?
They just tell you to go hit the transfer portal.
Yes,
what do you mean?
exactly.
Are we pretending like college coaches aren't able to fire players?
Dion did it to all 70 of his guys,
if they're
essentially.
Employer, at least maybe they get severance pay. He can walk away. College coaches can walk away from a player right now and owe him nothing.
And the portal saves that. The portal also saves them, because if you're considered employees, if you sign a contract, you're stuck in that situation where with the portal, you have there will be some ins and outs, but the portal allows you to go somewhere else and still get an education and also be able to play college sports without feeling like you're stuck in a situation that you don't want to be in or aren't even being accepted in.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be some guidelines though going forward. I do think I'm not against. I'm not saying that there needs to be a cap on earnings, but there absolutely has to be some universal framework going forward. I do think that's something that hopefully everybody at some point can come to terms on and agree with. There has to be some framework. It cannot just be completely wide open in each state different. So I am fine with there eventually being some form. Now, I don't think the earnings should be capped, but I am absolutely fine with some universal regulation, if you will, for what is allowed within NIL, because I do think that is something that's important. I don't think it should just be completely wide open. The problem is the NCAA, I think, is obviously going to try to push for some things that rein it way back in. I just think it needs to be clarified a little bit, some of the language. Are we going to say what Missouri is allowed, for example, as a state, that high school kids and their senior year can get NIL money before going to the school? All right, if that's what we want, I'm not even saying if that's what we want, then okay, let's make that universal then for the entire country, right? That's where I'm at. I'm not even so sure if I like that, by the way, though. To me, as a high school senior, that before you even step foot on a college campus, you should be allowed to start profiting off of NIL. I'm not actually a huge fan of that.
I don't have a problem with it, but the issue I have here is that I understand what you're saying, and like under normal things, we are constantly looking for balance. Like what makes the NFL or Major League Baseball or these other professional sports leagues fair? college football is the least fair sport in the United States. It has a massive imbalance of power. So if a state can balance power back in its own favor, I don't care. Like, you already have a massive advantage in power in college football anyway, from facilities, from boosters, from like, we don't cap how much a booster can put into an organization to reshape the way their lockers look.
No, but
why do I care if Missouri, the state, wants to give an ability to get athletes there through different means?
But it's not boosters, what we used to say, but now you got these collectives, right? I think there has to be some framework within what these collectives are, because everybody talks about everybody's worried about the car dealership that's giving the cars. 80 or 90% of the NIL money is coming from the collectives, not from the car company. So I'm very much pro name, image, and likeness. I'm glad we're at the point we're at. But I think anybody acting like we don't need some framework is also probably not accurate in this. Like, there has to be a balance between this as well. But yes, the problem is you got a lot of out of touch, let's just say, politicians that are trying to talk about this, including one that said that he would have paid to play football at West Virginia. I guess I gave it away by saying the state, but
a little too obvious.
But he would have paid to play at West Virginia if he had a choice. He wouldn't have needed a scholarship.
I would have played to play
this
basketball.
This isn't 1975 anymore, pal.
I paid to go to UKC anyway. If in addition to that, they let me shoot some hoops, we could have
scholarships aren't the same. Aren't worth the same.
Coming up next, we'll get to the Chiefs Red Half Hour, back into the Chiefs, and the one area where I think McCole Hardman helps this team the most.
Cody and Gold.
Last and probably most important question: are in fact all opinions?
On Cody and Gold, every day at 11:30 on your official broadcast partner, the Chiefs, 610 Sports Radio.
It is the Chiefs Red Half Hour here on Cody and Gold. Little update during the break. We were wondering what the corresponding roster moves could be now that McCall Hardman is back. One makes a lot of sense and was obvious, I think, for most people. The Chiefs did release kick returner Montrell Washington. That makes some room for McCall Hardman. That tells you also McCall, we all know, could also return some punts for this football team, so maybe Montrell Washington goes back to the practice squad. The one that's a little more surprising, although it's no harm done as long as he clears through to the practice squad, Cody, is Keandre Coburn. Yeah, this year's 6th-round draft pick out of Texas, he was released today. That clears up some space, you would believe, for Charles Omenihu, who is coming back from the 6-game suspension. So you don't like to lose a 6th-round draft pick, but if they can get him back on the practice squad, then you're good. You don't lose him.
We've probably gotten a little greedy here. We used to talk about this. I guess it doesn't matter anymore for the Chiefs because apparently every draft pick they make matters. 6th-round picks sometimes don't make the roster. Gold, sometimes they don't even make it out of training camp. He wasn't playing. Keandre Coburn, ideally, obviously, because they spent the pick on him, he'll end up in the practice squad. But if not, you spent a lot of money on Charles Omenihu. That is the logical move. Washington is the most logical move of all time. All he was doing was returning kicks for you and running a little special teams. McCall Hardman is a good kick returner, good punt returner, right? Okay, great. He's got the job. Now all we have left is what is the move they make to get Frank Clark in the building? And you and I are still hopeful that maybe it'll be that they make a move for, like maybe Frank Clark can be a practice squad player and they can hold off a little bit. Maybe they IR Justin Watson. I'd like them to buy themselves a little time with Frank Clark before they make the rest of those roster decisions. But at least 2 out of the 3 we know have to take place are done. Montrell Washington and Keandre Coburn both waived.
I do think the area McCall Hardman helps them in the most is the red zone, though. Yeah, maybe he helps in the punt return game a little bit, Cody, I guess. I'm fine most of the time with fair catches. Just hold on the ball.
Yeah, me too.
Don't fumble the snap and muff the punt. But I think red zone is where McCall Hardman helps them because you look at prior to his injury last year, the touchdown numbers. It's not the yardage. Like, I don't think suddenly he's going to finish this season with 400 or 500 yards and be that kind of guy. Because let's remember what he still was. Let's not overinflate what he was just because he's coming back. Now we don't want to act like we shouldn't act like he's better than what he was when he got cut. Because a lot of people were fine with him walking out the door. I think he helps him in the red zone. He had 5 touchdowns last year before the injury, the abdominal.
He has 18 total touchdowns in his 5
injury.
years in the league.
So,
or 4, I guess, because he didn't really play this year.
In the 4 games leading up to the injury, 22 targets, 17 catches for 226, but 5 total touchdowns. And I'm not even just talking jet sweeps where I think he helps. I know everybody has this thought like, oh, McCall Hardman, and he's good at them, but he doesn't run 30 of them. He did it 5 times last year. Now, look, if he does it 5 times this year, but on 4 of them, they're for 5+ yards, great. But he's more than just jet sweep guy. I think he helps him in some wide receiver screen game. I think he maybe could help stretch the field vertically. Something MVS hasn't done to this point. Something that Justin Watson was able to do, but he's hurt. This move still, to me, doesn't happen without Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore being disappointing through the first 6 weeks of the season. Maybe it's not just about Sky Moore. Maybe the true answer is it's about the entire wide receiver room. But if Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney lived up to what the Chiefs believe they could have been through 6 weeks, I don't believe they're making this move. I understand Justin Watson's hurt. He's not out for the season, though. He's out for 3 weeks. Would you be making a trade for a player if you only thought they were out for 3 weeks? I personally, maybe you disagree.
No,
I personally don't think that would be the case. To me, this is about bigger picture problems with the wide receiver room.
I understand that there's a pretty big game coming up in those next 3 weeks, which includes the other team who shares a 5-1 record with you in Miami. So maybe you were looking for a little bit of assurance there. And I understand, Danan earlier is well, what would have happened if another wide receiver went down? And what? I had to replace Kadarius Toney's 92 yards? I think I'd find a way. No offense about the replacement level players and this being a safety net right now. Replacing any of the Chiefs wide receivers based on their current performance is super easy. Their level of production, Gold, is replaceable right now. Kadarius Toney has played in all 6 games this year. He hasn't even missed a game technically, Gold, although we know that for parts of those games he just essentially didn't play. He has 92 yards. I'll be honest with you. I think, because they're a third of the way through the season, you could find another receiver good for 270 yards. Or MVS's 300 yards he's on pace for. Or Sky Moore's 450 yards he's on pace for. These are replaceable players right now. McCole Hardman never finished, other than the season he didn't finish last year, with less yardage than 450 in any individual season. He was better than that his rookie year. That's right now your leading wide receiver you thought going into the year in Kadarius Toney. It's better than Sky Moore. Their thing is they needed a complementary weapon. The red zone is probably where it helps the most. But I'll be honest, I'm not, because I should have seen this coming. I was surprised that they went after McCole Hardman. I'm not going to be surprised if they use him. Because right now, if he's just competing for playing time, it doesn't look like it'd be that hard to get some. The only guy he shouldn't be taking playing time away from, hypothetically, is Rashee Rice, right?
Yeah, that would be the one that would be upsetting. That if you're talking about how you divvy up snaps going forward, that's the one player that has been most promising for your wide receiver room. And cutting back on him or not increasing snaps on him because of McCole Hardman, that would be where I think there'd be a lot of frustration. I don't think that's where it's happening, though, because, again, I think McCole Hardman is going to help in the red zone. I think he's going to help perhaps with the snaps that Sky Moore's been getting that haven't been as effective, and wide receiver screen. Who's been running wide receiver screens? Kadarius Toney. Maybe that's where McCole Hardman steps in.
Dude, Kadarius Toney's average depth of target right now is like 2.5 yards. What happened? I thought he was also a deep threat. Is it the injury? Has he never been healthy? Is there any reason why Kadarius Toney's not running a route past like 8 yards? He is the biggest mystery of all of this. Sky Moore, I can figure out. I watched Sky Moore play last year, didn't break out. I told you he doesn't play fast. I can see where the limitations are with Sky Moore and why he might just settle into being a 400-500 DeMarcus Robinson level receiver in the NFL. Cool, I see it. I understand how we get there. Toney, I don't. I do not understand how I've seen him play some of the plays he makes in the NFL. Look the way he does sometimes when he gets an open space and not see how there hasn't been more production there. What's going on? That's the mystery I have. And then immediately you bring in McCole, who does take snaps away from those areas. Problem is, I feel like right now, the one thing that it's a bit frustrating with this team is, what do they have, like 92 slot receivers? Have they thought about one? Have they considered that some wide receivers line up on the outside? I'm not here to complain too much about a 5-1 team because I do think that this is a good move for the Chiefs. Have you thought about an outside wide receiver? Because McCole Hardman, I've been told, is a slot player. Rashee Rice is in the slot because Sky Moore can't get in the slot. Toney's also better in this. Who the hell's playing outside for this team? It's MVS, and he's not been productive.
That's the issue. I mean, that's the issue that they have had throughout this season. As much as we focus in on Toney and Sky Moore, because those are guys that younger players that you're looking ahead to the future too, that you were hoping can be part of it. MVS, most people I think were already heading into the season thought there was a chance this was the last year for MVS anyway. Now his performance is making that seem even more likely.
There's one text that confuses me about it because this is moving the goalposts. So I'd be careful with McCole. You and I are both not saying that McCole Hardman wasn't. We were all fine if McCole left. It was good. We understood because they thought that they were getting an upgrade in all the players they were taking. But all I heard from Sky Moore for years was, oh, he's not getting opportunity because he's stuck behind too many wide receivers. Well, McCole was stuck behind even more talented wide receivers because Tyreek Hill was out here getting 130 targets for this team. And now I see, well, McCole benefited from having Hill and Kelsey take all the coverage while he was here. That's why he was able to get the stats. Okay, so if he's behind really good wide receivers, well, then he can't get the opportunity. But then if he performs with those limited opportunities, now he's just the beneficiary of guys being too good. We're making it a little harder on McCole Hardman than it needed to be. McCole is MVS. McCole, in the time with the Chiefs, was a very borderline identical producer, dude. He was like a 550-yard wide receiver with 4 touchdowns. Every single year he was with the Chiefs. If you know what you're getting in a player, sometimes that's not a bad thing. There's the consistency, the reliability that this team kind of misses sometimes. And they miss that without Justin Watson. That is important about the injury that Dana mentioned earlier. They miss somebody they can just kind of rely on a little.
It's where Mahomes and who Mahomes trusts, too. We can talk about routes all we want, and we can talk about who is a replica of another receiver and all that. It's about who does Patrick Mahomes trust. We know Kelsey he trusts. We know he developed plenty of trust with Justin Watson. We know he kind of, at times, had trust with McCole Hardman.
Yeah, he did. I mean, he definitely used him in the red zone. I'll be interested to see how the rest of this goes. Did
you see the very important number news? Everybody's freaking out about the numbers.
No?
Very important news. McCole Hardman going to wear number 12. I know that's what everybody was waiting
12,
for.
12,
huh? Some people thought he was going to take 17. Now that's Richie James. Going to stay there even though he's on IR.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, remember Richie James? Remember, like, go
I
back to
do.
wide receivers.
Yep. I still think he could have helped the offense. I'll still maintain that.
He didn't play when he was here.
Yeah, he barely played. He never got a chance. He never got a chance. I'm
stuck by too many guys.
I'm staying with that take. I'm sticking with that. Richie James just never got an opportunity and then got hurt. We'll never know, man. We'll just never know what he could have been for this offense. You know, could have been that 800-yard receiver. You know, just couldn't get on the field.
He couldn't get on the field. Like, think about how you feel about the wide receivers right now. The performance of Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, and he wasn't getting on the field above them.
No.
Now, maybe that was because it was early in the season, and had Richie James stayed healthy, something tells me maybe he would have gotten some more snaps instead of like Sky Moore and MVS and these guys who, if we've talked about, are just going for some cardio rather than actually performing. Maybe there would have been some room with Richie James, but that's the whole point of the McColl thing, is that it a lot like the Frank Clark deal doesn't really hurt you to do it. I think some people are taking the stance of this means nothing about the wide receiver, it's just a player they trust. And I'm like, how can you watch them walk on a player, watch the wide receivers they trusted not perform, then bring back an old wide receiver and it not mean at least a little something about the wide receivers, you know? I mean, they haven't performed. The offense has struggled more than we're accustomed to. They're still a fine offense. It has to mean something, at least on that end. Although they continue to win. And once again, I saw the stat again, and I remembered from the last time, and I didn't realize that they were bordering on passing it again. I remember the stat from the early years of the Patrick Mahomes era. Scott Kaczmar put it out. Most consecutive games without losing by 7 or more points in NFL history. You might remember, we discussed this stat on this show, when from 2017 to 2020, the Chiefs went 49 consecutive games under Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes without losing a game by more than a touchdown, which means in the fourth quarter of every single damn game, this team was in it. It was the longest streak in NFL history. They took a brief sabbatical by losing by more than a touchdown in the regular season that year, and then eventually losing by more than a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Since that moment, the Chiefs have then gone 39 more consecutive games without losing a game by more than 7 points. It is currently the fourth longest active streak in the NFL. I'm going to boil this thing down real quick. This is coaching. This is an Andy Reid stat. You can put this on Mahomes if you want. This is an Andy Reid stat. He knows how to keep his team in the game. And as much as sometimes we complain about the grinded out nature of some of these wins that Andy Reid gets, and occasionally some losses in which they try to grind him out, this is why. Andy knows that if he's in the game, he has a chance to win the game. This man has played 80 of their last 85 games inside of a touchdown. And he's won 85% of those.
I mean, this is the stat to back up what we've all probably just noticed if you just casually watch the team and watch sports. When you have this certain type of player, in this case, Patrick Mahomes, you got a chance to win every single game. You're going to be in every single game. We say that in sports in basketball. If you've got a certain player, sometimes you got a chance to win every single game. If you had, if you had LeBron James on your team when he was in his prime, you got a chance to win every single basketball game because you got that dude.
Doesn't matter if Boobie Gibson and Anderson Varejao are your second and third best players.
In football, when you had Tom Brady, you got a chance to win every single game. You're always in a game. You're never out of it. With Patrick
I'm actually
Mahomes,
kind of surprised their team wasn't on this run list somewhere.
I wonder
just
how close they
occasionally
were.
dropped a dud.
The Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes, they have a chance to win every single game. The only game that you could point to where it wasn't the case really was the Super Bowl against the Bucs, or 2 years ago, the Bills game where the lightning delay when they came to Arrowhead on Sunday Night Football or whatever it was, where that game was just out of hand pretty quick. That's about it that I can think of off the top of my head of games where you just felt like, all right, you don't have a chance. There's plenty of times where the Chiefs played poorly, plenty of times where they lost, but as you just pointed out with the stat, they were still a one-possession game.
That's a hard streak to maintain. It's hard to not just be down by 7, have a team hold on to the ball and kick a field goal in the fourth quarter and beat you. How is it that in every single game, and again, because they have 2 of the 4 longest streaks in NFL history in that regard, like, one thing about Andy Reid-led teams, they're not going to be out of this game. They're going to be hovering around it somewhere. By the way, every other run is around championship caliber teams. 65 to 68 Packers. It's a pretty good squad if you want to go back and look at those. The Seahawks in the middle of their Super Bowl runs. And then I don't remember much about the 2009 to 11 Packers. That feels like that's after the first Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl, right? But probably firmly in the middle of when Aaron Rodgers was winning 1 million games, winning MVPs, that kind of thing. Like, you need these kind of stats to just kind of reinforce. A lot of this comes back to the question that you and I mentioned a couple weeks ago, which is for every game Bill Belichick coaches, I get closer to thinking that Andy Reid is going to people are going to make an argument, even though it'll be like hard because of the Super Bowl numbers. They'll be like, Andy was a better coach. He just didn't.
Were
have,
you here?
He didn't have Tom Brady.
I don't know. We talked
about it a little bit.
Were you here last week when we did that?
Yeah.
Or was it different?
Yeah, that was
day?
Monday or Tuesday. No, we talked about
we did it last week. That was a very conversation we had just about how at the end of the career, one guy's going to finish with rings at the end of his career and on the uptick, Andy Reid, and one guy's probably trending downward. But let's not forget what happened in the middle. I still think Bill Belichick gave a stronger case at this present moment. But if Andy coaches 5 more years and gets another ring or two, then it gets a little more interesting. But it's just the order, right, and recency bias, I do think is going to factor in why the conversation is going to work in Andy Reid's favor, probably, historically. But if you step back and understand where things were at, I think you probably still would come to the conclusion that it's Belichick. But in terms of quarterback and coach combination, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is a better quarterback-coach combo. He's an offensive-minded head coach. Bill Belichick, defensive-minded head coach. So I will always say that. We didn't even need to see Brady go to Tampa. Not the debate of who mattered more thing. I'm talking about like just who was the better QB coach combo. Reid and Mahomes, they're both. They're offensive minds. You're going to have a better QB coach combo if you've got an offensive-minded head coach than a QB coach combo if it's a defensive-minded. No matter how great of a head coach Bill Belichick has been.
I'm also very thankful in retrospect now that Andy finally found his coordinator that he could just leave in charge of things and walk away. Because, like, it's working with Spags. They obviously already have a couple of Super Bowl rings with him as the defensive, like in charge of the defense. So he can just walk away.
Yeah. Someone else said, don't forget, Bill Belichick, a lot of people are always going to pinpoint the cheating scandals and allegations that were out there as well. That's something that Andy doesn't have.
So some of them are just flat out proven. He absolutely videotaped portions of his opponents, which means he was probably doing it for so long. Don't you remember that they, destroyed the evidence of, a videotape? Like, oh, no, don't go in there. No, you don't want to see that. NFL didn't need that on their hands. That was the single biggest dynasty in NFL history. They were always going to protect Bill. I will always think of them, I'll be honest, as a little bit of cheaters because they got their hand caught in the cookie jar way too often. I think probably the deflated footballs one was the most overblown.
Yeah, that was
of the ones, and we probably didn't make nearly as big of a deal about the ones where he was straight up videotaping his opponents for years.
Yeah, Spygate.
That's a much bigger deal.
Does that also kind of hurt Tom Brady's legacy? Not to say that he's not a great quarterback, but the fact that they
had when you got 7 rings, man, and you're the quarterback.
Yeah, but when you have tape and Tom knows what everybody's doing, does that not tick off a little bit of what you've done?
Racked one up.
I think people put that more on Belichick than they do Brady.
I agree.
You might not be wrong that you're saying maybe people should put it more on Brady, but I just think I also put it more on Belichick than I do Tom Brady.
I think it's more of a Belichick thing, but I think it helps Tom Brady play as well as he did.
That might be true.
Not to say that he's bad, but I think it did impact how successful he actually was. But that is totally a Bill thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Did it help him? Maybe so, but is that why he won 7 ring or whatever?
No,
I mean,
no. It's more on Belichick,
you also
for sure.
have to be pretty good, turns out.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're expected. By the way, we're expected to hear from McCole Hardman today. It sounds like he will be at the podium.
Wow. Okay.
So we are expected. We'll let you know when he steps up because Dave Tobe mentioned that if McColl's active, he is a candidate to return punts if he's active. Now that Montreal,
who else is going to do it if it's not him?
Yeah, Watson's out. Tony's injury prone, so they don't want to put him back there. Yeah, I don't know who else. I mean, if McCole Hardman's active and he is in the locker room today wearing number 12. We'll find out. We're going to hear from McCole Hardman. Maybe he'll open up to, because he sent out a couple tweets, McCole Hardman, going back to him for a second. He sent out a couple tweets before he came back to Kansas City. This was maybe a week or so ago. And he's like, basically, if only you guys knew the full story, I can't wait to tell, and it has nothing to do with my current situation. I think it has to go back to the injury, and there were a lot of reports about what he was going through in terms of how painful maybe and gutting it out to get to the point where he was able to play last year in the postseason. And then he got hurt again, right? He had this, we never got the real answer. They called it, a pelvic and abdominal injury, I think is how they phrased it. Maybe we'll get some more insight on where things stand for him or what was going on in the past. Also, Dave Tobe saying that we were wondering if last week when Tommy Townsend was injured and questionable for the Thursday game, everybody's saying would Justin Reed have been the backup punter or who would have done it? Sounds like a couple of reporters in the room. Patrick Mahomes, the backup punter. Tommy Townsend can't go, which is hilarious. There's no way.
There's no way it was Pat.
I don't buy it.
Tom's messing with us.
I don't buy it. You think they're going to not do QB sneaks, but they're going to let him punt?
I'll say this.
Cody, they're going to not do QB sneaks, but they're going to let him punt?
They're weird like that. I do think, I want us to put this on the record at least. I do think Patrick Mahomes could hit a bomb of a punt. I assume he is
I don't know, man.
that he could just absolutely drill one. He's unstoppable.
Yeah. Someone says maybe Sky Moore could return punch. Yeah, maybe if McColl's not active. Sky's been kind of the emergency punt returner when needed.
Yeah, I mean, he's at least done the job now. Man, there's just no way. There's no way it was Pat.
All right, coming up next, we'll get to what's trending, and we'll keep an eye out at Arrowhead because, again, we're expected to hear from new Chiefs wide receiver McCole Hardman right here on Cody and Gold.
Cody and Gold.
The facts on this show are irrelevant.
Brought to you.
Chiefs front, some physicals could take place today. Frank Clark expected to rejoin the Chiefs, got to pass a physical. McCole Hardman officially back and wear number 12 for this team. We are expected to hear from McCole Hardman in just a couple of minutes. We'll let you know when that is taking place. And Dave Tope did mention that if he's active on Sunday, he could be their punt returner.
I mean, that would make sense. I feel like right now their last 2 punt returners are injured. Justin Watson had been handling some of those responsibilities. They brought Washington up to handle the rest, and then they're both now hurt. We don't know how long Justin Watson's going to be out. They did say they're going to try to bring Coburn and Washington back to the practice squad. At least Dave Tope hinted at that possibility, so we'll see whether or not that's the case. Next up on What's Trending, the KC Current have officially naming rights secured for their new stadium in the Riverfront. CPKC Stadium is what it'll go by here when it opens coming up in the spring. CPKC is in Canadian Pacific. Used to be KC Southern, Kansas City.
Yeah, they merged.
Which they had merged a little while ago. So, a semi-local company. It's a merger of a company. Kansas City Southern was obviously a long-term railroad. But I actually kind of like this, too, because they're right down there by the railroad tracks. Kind of an interesting, not one I've seen as a stadium sponsor before, but CPKC, the new stadium sponsor for the Current.
CPKC, okay. CPKC.
I just say KC, baby. It all just kind of like flows together, right?
Heading out to the Current state. Are you going to say you're heading out to the...
I think you'll say CPKC. We'll see. I don't know what they're going to go with yet. Normally, stadiums eventually get nicknames. I don't know what it's going to be, so give it time.
There you go. Pretty big deal, though, to get naming rights.
Trying to get a couple of KC Current players to come to Club 610.
We should do that.
They all live in town.
We should make that happen.
According to sources, they all live, literally in the same apartment complex together.
Yeah.
A huge majority of them. And it turns out that a former friend of the show, Danny Welniak, is their media relations director. So I'm working on it. I'm trying to get some current players here for Club 610.
All right, next up on What's Trending, MLB postseason continues. Big win last night for the Houston Astros, avoiding going down 3-0. They got a win to make it a 2-1 series. So we got 2 games this evening. You got Phillies, Diamondbacks. The Phillies are the early game around 4 o'clock today. They're already up 2-0 on the D-backs. Then the late game tonight around 7 o'clock or so will be the Astros once again in Arlington taking on the Rangers. But as I said, really big win last night. Got plenty of run support for the Astros. They got all over Max Scherzer.
Got roughed up.
Yeah. So watch out. Houston, now all of a sudden it's weird. Like it's 2-1, but you almost feel like Texas to bounce back because that thing gets even back up. Yeah. And then it goes back to Houston.
Am I also supposed to, from a gambling perspective, just bet any time Nick Castellanos home run until he doesn't?
Yes.
Dude,
Am I supposed to just keep that bad boy rolling? I won on it the other night.
Him and Kyle Schwarber.
Run every single damn game.
Him and Kyle Schwarber are unbelievable.
Did you guys see, by the way, the video of DeAndre Swift
Yes.
and his teammate at the game last night?
Edmonds, I think, right?
Edmonds.
Yeah.
Talking about baseball last night, sitting front row of that playoff game. It was so good.
They're just they're just casually hanging out and they're amazed by baseball. They obviously haven't been to a baseball game before. They don't know a ton about it. They're talking about wait, do we call him the ref or the? Oh, I know you got to call it the umpire.
And then he's like, dude, they're talking about not standing in there against a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. I'm like, you play NFL football.
It was an awesome clip though. They seemed like they had a great time.
They did. If you missed it, it's definitely worth checking out. Next up on What's Trending, Doug Peterson tells reporter Ed Werder he expects Trevor Lawrence to start tonight against the New Orleans Saints. There's been a lot of doubt about whether or not he would be available. Earlier, Adam Schefter said they were going to test it in pregame. But if he's telling Ed Werder he expects him to start, that probably means unless things go real bad in pregame, Gold, you could expect him out there. Obviously, from the Chiefs' perspective, you're a big Saints fan tonight. They have they have a top 5 passing defense in the NFL, one of the better defenses in the NFL. So it'll be whether or not. I think it's right now, it's pretty clear Cleveland's the best defense, right? Like by a lot.
Cleveland or Kansas City.
Chiefs are also
seriously. Cleveland or Kansas City, best defense in football right now. The Saints, 1.5-point favorites. They were 2-point favorites a couple hours ago, but now news trickling out that Trevor Lawrence could play, so you're seeing some reverse there. The total's also gone up about a half point to 40, or actually a full point, 40.5. Although the Saints, 6 straight games this year, all of them have gone under. And 12 straight Saints games going back to last year have gone under. Yeah, just a weird trend, right? So either you think it's going to flip.
Pretty good trend.
It's either going to flip finally, or you keep riding out the trend. Lastly, on What's Trending, a reminder, we are streaming the show on YouTube as well. You can watch us, which is good or bad, depending on how you want to look at it.
It's something.
It's something for sure. We encourage you to subscribe. It's free. Takes 2 seconds. If you don't mind, go into YouTube. You can watch the show anytime. YouTube.com/@610SportsKC. YouTube.com/@610SportsKC. It takes 5 seconds to click the subscribe button. You're locked in there. You can watch the show. You can listen to the show. And we'll be putting out some clips on there as well going forward. You can also watch it on Twitch and Facebook.
You only get till the end of the week to subscribe to the YouTube channel for a chance to be invited to Club 610. We'll choose a couple of winners, as he mentioned, early next week. We'll give you till the end of Friday, right? Into Club 610 on Friday. Anybody who is a new subscriber or just hits me up on there and says that they were subscribed before and proves it to me will be entered for a chance to be a guest at Club 610. We're going to do that next week. We figured that was probably the best way to convince you to do it, so hopefully that works.
Reminder, coming up at 1 o'clock, we'll talk some fantasy football with our guy, Paul Charchian of GuillotineLeagues.com. That'll be presented by Twin Peaks. That's, of course, what's trending here on the show. But looking forward to talking to Charch, get a set for Week 7 fantasy football. What should you do with the Trevor Lawrence quarterback situation this evening? And a lot of injuries in general with quarterbacks impacting fantasy lineups. And then we'll have to bring up, once again, Charch, the LA Chargers fan. He says it's a plant, a marketing plant. It's 2 weeks in a row we've had Charch on with some conspiracy stuff.
He's deep into the conspiracies lately.
He is.
Is it because the Vikings have no chance to do anything of importance this year?
I don't know, man.
You just gotta find other interests.
I'm not sure what the background is.
He's a big Vikings guy.
Well, I know that. I just don't know, the pushing some of this stuff out. But he's great for fantasy football, and we will talk to him at 1 o'clock. Mentioned during What's Trending, not only is McCole Hardman back in the building and officially signed, the expectation is Frank Clark will do the same sometime today, and he'll be back, if not already back, in Kansas City. We talked to Danan Hughes about Frank Clark, and he sounded like he wasn't I won't say not welcoming, but he certainly wasn't as sold on having Clark back in the picture the same way maybe he was accepting of McCole Hardman coming back. And I think his point was more about the role, right? And I think
where does he fit? We know where McCole fits. Where does Frank Clark fit?
I don't think they would be bringing Frank Clark back unless there was that understanding. Everybody loves you in the locker room. You're a great leader, but this defense is in a different spot than it was a year ago. And we've got some young players that we want to play. But we value you as a leader, and we think you can help us still on the field if necessary. So, I don't know if it ends up being practice squad. If it's not practice squad, then is it just very limited snaps on a weekly basis? I have no problem bringing back Frank Clark, especially because the financials are going to be nothing. And I do believe and trust that Steve Spagnuolo is not going to feel like he has to play Frank Clark just because he's Frank Clark.
No, I don't think that he's going to feel obligated to do it. I also think but I do think that they should enter this one with more trepidation, as in, don't just immediately assume Frank Clark has to have a role. Somebody pointed out, it's like, hey, man, it was like less than 8 months ago. He had 2.5 sacks in the postseason for this Chiefs team again. He is the second, I think, right now, currently still, sack leader in postseason NFL history, or third, right? He's right in that top 3 list. I think it's just some New England Patriot who maybe has got the better of him during this run. So, I mean, I definitely think there's a place. But I do have more caution about Frank Clark, mostly because he's never been the player that he was the first year in Kansas City. He had just firmly settled into what we view Carlos Dunlap as, a rotational defensive lineman who is pretty good at getting to the quarterback when he's there. I also think it's easier with a guy like this because he fits everything they do perfectly. Same defensive coordinator, same guys in the damn defensive line who help him get open. He's best friends with Chris Jones. This feels like an easy, hey, getting the band back together one. I also think that they're making these moves because they can't afford to make different ones. I think part of the reason you got to Frank Clark is because it's less expensive than getting Carlos Dunlap. It's less expensive than getting the guys who are sitting on their couch, because Frank Clark will come to you for league minimum. Frank Clark will come to you for nothing. He left Denver just to come to you for nothing. He's the one player that I'm very confident he's probably the cheapest option you could have, and already knows your system. That's why you do it. Not because you're sure he's going to turn into some massive stats, but it just makes sense that way.
It's just the postseason. That's all it is. I mean, you could tell me, Cody, he could play a handful of snaps the entire season.
Binkley's got me, by the way. Willie McGinnis, Bruce Smith, and then Frank Clark.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Bink. Bink's always listening. He's always got us. I think it's just about the postseason. That's it. I'm with you. Get that sack record in the postseason. Truly, you're saying the signing is worth it if he makes one single play.
That's how I feel
one
about,
single play in the postseason.
Yes. Yeah. It can't be one play against what's the worst game much on their schedule? Broncos.
Patriots, maybe. Or Broncos. Yeah, sorry. Thinking of the Broncos, next week, I would love for him to get some snaps, though, against Russell Wilson. That'd be fun.
Though. Oh, yeah? Because he's only a sack back from Bruce Smith,
he would be motivated in that game.
And only 2.5 sacks back of Willie McGinnis. in way less games, mind you. Willie McGinnis had to do it over the course of like 2 decades. Frank Clark's going to knock it out in like 5 years. Just show up, get some sacks, move on.
Frank Clark legend grows.
I'm less excited about that. I don't know that it has as much of an immediate impact as McCole Hardman. But what's not to like
I'm
about
excited.
Frank Clark
Yeah, but
coming
you're
back?
excited about this kind of stuff.
They said they run the damn AFC. They lied. They said we wasn't going to whoop that lied. Cincinnati Bengals, who? Who that? Send their home. That's who they is. That's who they is. Sent their home. Where they at? In the locker room crying. One, I don't know what the hell he did. 85, I don't know what the hell he did, but cry all day.
Rob Collins posted that again last night. That was after the AFC title game. I love, by the way, we made our producer, we actually did make him do this one on purpose. We made Drew cut that audio, Mr. Cincinnati Bengals fan.
Do you remember listening to that after the loss?
After the loss, I was not paying any attention
Did you think after the Chiefs beat Cincinnati and after Frank Clark was talking that, you know what, did you think that fast forward 8 months later, you'd be in Kansas City producing a show, having to cut that audio so we could make fun of your Cincinnati Bengals again?
No, I never thought about that.
That's your own fault. You played for a job in Kansas City as a Cincinnati Bengals fan. There's no way we're responsible for
and
this.
I did make it very clear to you guys. I said, hey, by the way, I love the Bengals. They are my team.
Yeah.
We got to figure out. We'll start taking some suggestions early here. 913-586-7610. Eventually, these two teams are going to play each other. And let's just be honest. At some point, a wager will be made.
No doubt.
I'm not sure what that wager is. Maybe it's that Drew has to fake a heart attack in a restaurant to try to get out of a $37 bill.
Like that guy during Trash Today.
if the Bengals lose.
My acting would be so terrible.
But we got to find something that we can wager with Drew that either we'll do if the Chiefs lose or he'll do if Cincinnati loses for that eventual, what is it, New Year's Day game?
It's the 31st or 30th.
Or New Year's Eve. Okay,
31st, yeah, New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've got some suggestions for what we can bet between each other on that, we'll take some early suggestions today. 913-586-7610.
I've already got the one that I think I'm going to do for you guys.
You've said this
What
since
is
the
that?
first day on the job.
Very
and
vague.
Yeah, it's very vague.
It was actually JT that suggested
JT,
it. I'll say that. JT suggested it, and
Former
I was like, you know what? That's a good idea.
Now that JT has moved on to part-time employee from intern,
He produced
he's been promoted.
he produced that betting show last night for me.
JT sent me a text yesterday and said he was one of the members who had subscribed to the YouTube channel in an attempt to get an invite to Club 610. Should we just invite JT?
He
used to
mentioned
work
this to
here.
me last night.
Does he want to come tomorrow?
It sounds like he does.
Does JT want to just come tomorrow? JT, if you're listening, you can just come tomorrow. We'll send you a text. If you want to come to Club 610 tomorrow, you can come to Club 610 tomorrow. It's okay. You're an employee of this
But
business. We will allow
the listeners that subscribe, we will still draw for that tomorrow.
Yeah, it'll just be one less. You weren't going to come tomorrow anyway, so JT's not taking your spot. Don't worry about it.
I was waiting for that. You know that text was coming.
JT
Someone's going to
was
be very
stealing
upset. They're going to be
someone's
very
spot.
upset with you.
No, I'm not giving away your spot. If JT comes tomorrow, he's not eating up anyone's location.
All right, let's get to all 32 around the NFL, as we do a couple times each week here on Cody and Gold. This is not the same approach that Drew had earlier in the week, where you were kind of hating on Caleb Williams a little bit, saying that he essentially was overrated. That's not my point here. But we do have to stop paying attention to every absurd Caleb Williams story. You guys saw the latest one this week, which was actually from the summertime, but for some reason, it only gained traction this week. And that was the story that Caleb Williams or his agents have been pushing to notify teams that he would like a partial equity stake in the team that drafts him in order for them to draft him. Now, Aaron Rodgers reportedly tried this with the Jets, and the NFL already flat out said, no, we're not getting that game. We're not going to start letting teams offer up ownership to get a player to sign with them. I'm not going to even blame Caleb Williams individually. I'm going to blame the people around him. They're making him look a little foolish right now. This kid's getting bad advice if this is true.
Yeah.
If it's true. You are not, as a rookie coming in the league, getting an ownership share. Aaron Rodgers couldn't get it with the Jets. The league put the kibosh on it. It's like it's not happening. This is stupid. This is like one of the dumber stories too. You really think that a kid coming out of college right away, he's going to be the first player in NFL history to get an equity share? No chance.
You'd have to be a really bad organization to even consider it, because
not even allowed right now, Cody.
No, it's not allowed. But even if it was allowed, the risk of giving that to an NFL player, also, they do have limits. So they don't let NFL quarterbacks roll in the league and be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL anymore. Like they used to let Sam Bradford.
He was the last one.
Show up, right? They don't let you do that anymore, even if they did. But they don't, right? So based on what Kyler Murray would be expected to make as the Caleb Williams would be expected to make as the number 1 overall pick next year. Do you realize that if they paid him his entire salary in NFL ownership, it would be like 0.00, and I am not making this 0.03% of ownership? Just take the cash and invest it in something else. What are you going to do? Live at your buddy's house?
I mean, Patrick Mahomes yesterday was asked about owning teams. He said one of his goals is one day to eventually be part of an ownership group or an owner of an NFL team. Again, after his playing career.
Very different.
I just...
Someone said I could see the Browns doing it.
Yeah. I just somebody like...
Yeah,
I'm already annoyed with the draft process around Caleb Williams. I'm already annoyed by it.
It's just a lot of noise. A lot of complaining for somebody who needs to prove something at that level. Before
his dad's talking a little bit too.
I really don't think it. This is why I'm being careful not to blame him. I don't even know if it's him. I think it's bad advice or it's his dad or I don't even really think it's him directly that's putting out a lot of this noise. It's not just this equity share thing. There's been these are the only 3 teams he wants to play for stuff. Like someone else needs to keep their mouth shut a little bit around him. Is making him look bad.
Yeah, his dad's giving off some serious LeVar Ball energy of I'm going to say what's going to happen and this is how it's going to go, and it's not necessarily the right way. Mine is Kyler Murray. So the Cardinals are going to get him. I mean, he tweeted he was back at practice. Does that mean he plays this weekend? Who knows? But with the approaching trade deadline, they'd probably like to see him play a little bit. Who do you think gets Kyler Murray? I know that we're in a little interesting situation with this really good class, it seems like, of quarterbacks in the draft. And then you've got Kirk Cousins, who likely won't be with Minnesota next year. And then Kyler Murray, who could be on his way out the door as well. I mean, is there going to be a spot for Kyler Murray? Or is Kirk Cousins the more, favored quarterback in terms of wanting to be added to your team?
Kyler Murray has got to be a next year pre-draft problem if you're going to try to eject from that plan. Look across the league right now and tell me right now, why would you go for Kyler Murray if I'm not even sure Kirk Cousins has a home? Like, there aren't enough starting spots for just, like, reliable veteran starters.
There'll be some team, we were going through this before the show trying to figure out who it is. I don't know there will be some team that convinces themselves that Kirk Cousins is the missing piece next offseason. But, yeah, right now with the amount of quarterbacks that you were saying that are going to get drafted, I think it is challenging. Kyler Murray, they do need him to play and play well the back half of the season to put them in a position to be able to trade him to somebody this offseason.
Could he actually end up being like Jameis and go from starter to backup and actually be backing up a team?
I think someone might give him a chance to truly compete for a starting job.
I mean, Baker
season
Mayfield got a starting job
Tampa?
this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, could be Tampa again.
I think it'd be more likely
Atlanta?
that Kyler got a starting opportunity than even Kirk. Not that Kirk can't do it, but it's just like
no,
younger, athletic.
You don't think Kirk Cousins is
Kirk
starting
would
for
be
anybody?
favorite.
else?
I think he'll start for someone too. I'm just saying if it was down to one spot, I think you'd roll the dice with Kyler.
Ooh, I would pick Kirk.
You know you're getting Kirk.
Yeah, I think teams would be more like if the contract was equal next year, and let's ignore the fact that you have to trade for Kyler Murray, you don't have to trade for Kirk Cousins in the offseason. If it was all equal and they both were on the same, let's just call it $35 million 1-year contract, then you would go Kirk over Kyler. Absolutely.
I can't believe that people are saying this. And I'm not, look, maybe someone listening to this show is a professional flag football player. I'm not doubting your athletic ability against most people on this planet. But I have now seen 3 different national reporters suggest that it would not be in the U.S.'s best interest to use NFL players for the eventual Olympic Games in 2028, in which the NFL is encouraging NFL players to go out for a chance to win a gold medal. The suggestion being that these guys train 12 months out of the year to be flag football players and that they would be better than NFL players at that job. Are you insane? Are you trying to tell me right now that just because some dude trained how to be good at flag football for 12 months out of the year, that all of a sudden he's going to guard Tyreek Hill on a 60-yard bomb from Mahomes?
Who's saying that the NFL players
Peter
be bad
Schrager, multiple
They're
people.
saying they're bad at flag football?
Multiple people are suggesting that professional flag football players would be better than professional NFL players at flag football. That's a ludicrous idea to me.
Yes,
In what world would an NFL player be worse at flag football than the dude who probably was really good at
world.
D2 football or couldn't make an NFL roster after he was a bottom line D1 player? Get out of here. They can't.
Yeah, that's
first, it's
dumb.
the speed. The speed is enough of a problem before you get to any other portion of this.
By the time we get to 2028 or whenever that would happen, do you think that they've got a professional flag football league, like an actual? I don't know if that even exists now. To my knowledge, it
I'm
doesn't.
assuming there are flag like really
Do they actually
super
have a
competitive
pro
flag
league
football
by
leagues.
then, where you could actually hand select guys that don't play in the NFL? I feel like
A
the
pro
NFL.
league?
Yeah,
There's already
there is.
professional
American flag football
There's
league.
already like pro.
Okay.
We just don't know about it. But there's already pro flag football leagues.
So there is-
I
there
told
is
you
an
my
actual
concern-
established-
My concern is more the injury risk. I've told you that. Like it's expanding the game and all that. My only concern would be like if I'm the Chiefs, I would probably not want Patrick Mahomes playing in that.
These guys look like they're in very good shape. They look like they can run very fast. Christian McCaffrey would cook their ass. Are you insane? Like, this is the logic of somehow pro football players
and also,
would be better.
in terms of,
Train
like-
it for like 3 months. We're good to go. It's like training camp. Flag football, they played with the red shirt on.
Sorry, in terms of sports honors, getting a gold medal, a gold medal is one of the most distinguishable, I think, awards or prizes for any athlete in any sport. Who would deny the opportunity potentially to do that?
Someone does say grabbing flags about 75% of the game. Says there is a technique of its own.
And you don't think
I'm
these
sure there
guys?
is,
We don't
yeah.
think these guys can learn that technique. They play in the NFL. You don't think they're smart?
It would not take them very long
You
at
don't
all.
think they're smart enough to figure out the technique as gifted
Meanwhile,
as they are?
If they're going to compete in the Olympics, Tyreek or Patrick Mahomes, he's not going to just like never train with the team, show up 2 weeks later and be like, I'm a flag football player now. I assume he'll hit a couple of practices.
Ultra competitive.
And
in the
also,
offseason.
they
Also,
have-
he doesn't even have to do it. All he has to do is throw the damn ball.
They have the Pro Bowl to practice now, too.
True.
So you do that for a few more years, and I think the technique will be down for some of these guys.
Honest to God, I'd like it if they just to prove a point. The entire Olympics of flag football in 2028 should be all just of these semi-professional flag football players and one NFL player. I just want all of them and Christian McCaffrey. And then let's just see who's the best player on the flag football field. Just give me one. Give me
Have
one
like a
player to
combine
get there.
to pick who's going to make the team or not.
Yeah, I don't doubt that the sport is difficult. We're just saying that
yeah.
the NFL, the best football players on earth, could probably figure out how to play flag football. That's all we're saying. That I am confident. I'm not saying that there's not a learning curve and all that. And we're not talking about you and I. We're talking about the
NFL
best
players.
Tyreek
football
Hill
players
and-
on earth. By the way, also, heck, you tell me. I don't care if the player's retired. I still would say, like,
Chad Johnson?
If Tom Brady wanted to be quarterback, by then he'll be 48 years old. I would still say, you know what? Pretty good chance of getting a gold medal with 48-year-old Tom Brady as my QB for flag football.
T.O.?
Dude, honestly, some of the old retired quarterbacks would be great at it because, although I still wonder if like having a mobile quarterback would mean more in flag football. Like having Lamar
So you just
Jackson's
want Mike
ability.
Vick?
Dude, having Lamar Jackson
my
out there
gosh,
seems like it'd be
Michael
a
Vick.
massive advantage in flag football, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Versus like Tom Brady just standing back there dealing.
2028, is that right? LA?
I think so.
Or is it 26? It's 28, right?
Yeah, I think it's 28 is when it's being introduced officially.
Okay. That's
I know
all 32.
I know mine wasn't really about the teams. I had a different take.
That's all right. That's fine.
I feel like we need to
I think
get
it's
into
good.
that. I feel like a lot of people talking about this flag football thing being like better for professional flag football players. I just feel like, well, I'm better at grabbing the flag. You're not going to catch him. If you're just the guy if you're the best player in the professional flag football, you're not catching Christian McCaffrey. He is leaving. You're not going to touch the flag because he's that much faster than you. You're never going to touch Tyreek Hill's flag. He just scored a touchdown. Doesn't matter.
Then you'll get grittied on, and yeah. I wonder if there'll ever be like a score implementation where Team USA is beating Team Canada or Team England 64-0, and it's the third quarter. It's like, all right, guys, you know what? We understand you're good enough.
Oh, it says QBs can't run the ball in flag football. Oh, never mind.
Correct.
Well, then
Well, not run, but being mobile in the pocket, though.
dial up Tom Brady.
That's where you do like a double reverse, and then the quarterback can.
I don't know all the rules, though.
you
I don't
get
know all the rules. You
creative
can
with
do
it.
reverses and all that. I don't know. Something
You guys
tells
want to
me
do a 6-10 flag football game?
Yes.
Not like we have enough people.
We can figure it out.
Probably need some listeners or something.
I'm down.
I don't have any flags.
It's the only football I've ever
we
played.
can- I think we can find some.
I mean, look at me. I've never played tackle football. Are you kidding me?
My parents wouldn't let me. Said I was going to die.
Well, good advice. Good advice, actually.
Probably right.
For all three of us, I think. Coming up next, we'll get to the random question of the day and just what we're in store for Sunday afternoon when the Chiefs take on the Chargers.
Cody and Gold on 610 Sports.
Paul Charchian of GuillotineLeagues.com in Chargers games are very similar. McCole Hardman back in a Chiefs uniform officially today, wearing number 12, and right now he is speaking to the media.
Are you happy to be back?
Oh yeah, definitely. Lot of emotions, man. Definitely happy to be back with my old team. A lot of familiar faces around here. Used to a system, so definitely, glad to be here.
Did you miss us?
I did. I miss all y'all guys, man. All y'all.
Michael, when were you informed of the trade, and just what were your first thoughts?
Well, I seen it on the online, like there was exploring options, I guess. And then after that, I kind of got with my agents, and they said, yeah, it's some talk that they could possibly trade you. And then after that, that's when we just started, just kind of just waiting for the inevitable, for real, just seeing what's gonna happen. And I guess they kind of kept it low key about the teams who was very interested. I still don't know who all was in that mix, but once I heard it was KC, I was kind of happy to go back somewhere I was used to and where I've been most of my career. So.
Cole, I know you just got here, but have you gotten into the playbook at all to see how different it is from what you left?
Pretty much the same, honestly. Maybe new wrinkles, probably a couple different terminology, formation wise. But other than that, I think it's kind of much the same. Probably I definitely got to go through it a few times just to memorize it again. But it shouldn't take too long.
So could you be ready to play on Sunday?
If I'm needed, I don't think we really got into that much of a discussion about it. It's been talked about, but I kind of just more up to Coach Reed and Veach and see how they want to do things.
What did Andy and Matt Nagy and those guys tell you about your role? Like it's been?
I guess. I don't know. They just when I got here, they just happened me to be back. Obviously they still been preparing for a game this whole week, so I really ain't trying to be too much of a distraction. But I'm pretty sure we'll talk about that a little bit more after this practice and kind of just nail that down and see exactly what they need me for.
I know you had your own thing going on in New York, but did you follow at all what was going on here?
I did, yeah, definitely. Was watching, and definitely the games I could watch if they played before us or after us. It's kind of be more of a habit because you've been here so long. You definitely want to see what your older teammates doing and see how they doing.
But what do you hope to show now that you're back here?
Man, just hopefully I can get into a role where I can help out the team any way I can. Honestly, really ain't too much. I'm not trying to do. Whatever they need me at, whether it's returns, whether that's guard a receiver. Hell, they need me to go on kickoff. Let me know. I'm just trying to here to help best way I can.
Well, do you have any idea why things didn't work out or didn't click when you were in New York?
I don't know, man. Aaron kind of went down. And then from there, it kind of was just everybody was in the air with a lot of things. But honestly, I really don't know, but I guess that's just behind us now. I got a lot of respect for those coaches and the coaching staff, and I don't think they did anything wrong. But things just didn't work out. They supposed to work out, but now I'm here, so hopefully we can just go forward from here.
You're comfortable here because this is where you were drafted, right? When you made the choice, you had to leave. Was there an offer here? What was the choice like to go to New York in the first place? Take us through that offseason.
Talking about free agency?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was a few teams actually. I think the Browns was one. I think there was a heavy contender, and a few. I really can't think who exactly it was, but it was maybe 5 or 6 teams that was definitely in and out trying to see exactly where where I wanted to go. Basically, it's more so what was the better deal, and I kind of liked the Jets organization and what they were doing. They had a great defense at the time. And then they, had with Garrett Wilson over there. I wanted to have a chance to play alongside him. So it was a lot of things that went into consideration. But ultimately, I think the Aaron Rodgers news kind of started going up and everything. But I kind of based my decision on him not being there because we didn't know if he was going to retire or not. So I'm very comfortable with my decision with him not even being there. But it was a long process, and definitely was trying to come back here. But the way things was working, it was just it's kind of hard, and didn't really want to just wait it out too long, and other teams sign other players, so that can do what I do and stuff like that. So kind of try to get on a decision a little quick. So.
I think it was the other day you had some commentary about just the injuries being connected to you and how you maybe have some frustrations about being connected to injury prone. What do you feel in that regard over these past couple of years, and what do you want people to know just about?
Yeah, like how am I injury prone? Like I don't understand. Like, first of all, I played 3 years every game, so that right there tells you right there like, oh, the guy's not injury prone, you know. And I got into my 4th year and got into a freak injury, and that people don't even have no idea about, which left me hospitalized actually the next day. And people really don't understand. Like I was in hospital for 10 days. I had literally had no feelings in my leg for 4 days, 4 or 5 days. I couldn't walk for like 4 or 5 days. And then finally got the feeling back in my legs probably like the 6th day, and I walked the next 2 days, couple of days, and finally got discharged from the hospital. And then went on the road to recovery. Also to get back to playing the AFC Championship game, which I was freaking like 65, 70%, and end up tearing my groin on that play, the last play I played, which was a blessing in disguise for me, honestly, so I can really have surgery and repair everything, So people saying injury prone, I'd be like, man, listen, I played every game, never had a problem with injury. Of course, it's in this league, you're going to have knick-knack injuries, but never nothing that really kept me out or, that I couldn't play through. But that one just so happened to be something I had to actually have surgery and be in the hospital for there where I couldn't come back and play. So.
Not having feeling in your
How
legs.
are you different than when you left here? Sometimes when you step outside an organization, you see a different way of doing things. And is there something that maybe you've learned by being away that you're bringing back? Or are you faster than you were before? I mean, how are you different coming back?
I think more mature actually, mentally, going to a different organization for something that you're used to, that you've been used to for 4 years, kind of just show you the difference in, certain situations that you've been in and how to, approach and do certain things. So I think just mentally, the maturity, I think I've grown that. Definitely learned a lot from Aaron, to be a better receiver and seeing things different ways. So, that's a guy right there that has, a lot of experience, 19 years, I believe he's been in the league. So just learning from him and seeing how he go about things and how serious he is in certain things kind of, teaches you, how to be a better pro as well. So I think I could kind of learn that being over there.
But Cole, when you got that team last year, described it as an abdominal injury, what actually led to being the issue of you going to the hospital? Was it a core muscle injury?
Honestly, I don't know, man. The next day, I finished the game fine. I guess it was against the Titans. I finished the game fine. The next day, I was perfectly fine, and then probably around like 2:30 p.m., 3 o'clock that day, I caught a cramp, like middle cramp, like in my stomach, and didn't really think that much of it. But every hour, it got worse and worse. To the point where I couldn't walk. And that's kind of where it led me to be in the emergency room. And when I got to the emergency room, I took my last steps for like 5 days. So the bed that I got in at the emergency room was the bed I was in for 10 days. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of one of those injuries that was like that. We didn't really shed much light on too in last year. It wasn't really need to, but now that we're here, like it's kind of one of them injuries that's like it make you think about a lot of things. So I'm just happy to actually be here and healthy and able to do the things that I normally was able to do.
Sam? Were you at the facility when you go to the ER? I mean, can you kind of take us through where you were when you
I was at home. I was at home. Like I said, it was after the game on Monday. It was a Monday, we off on Mondays. And literally, my folks just had left. It was just me and my girl. I think my cousin was here as well. I think he was leaving a little later. And literally, my girl was going to get some food. I was playing the game. Felt some discomfort, got a cramp. I went to lay down, caught up, and literally every hour it got worse, worse, and worse. And I called Rick and told him, I said, hey, man, something ain't right, I'm hurting. He said, if it get worse, call me back. I called him back like 5 minutes later. It was in tears, like, hey, I can't do this. And he was like, okay. And that's when I got to the ER from my house, and my girl dropped me off. And after that, it was, it started from there.
So, well, I got a football question, but what they call that? What was the diagnosis?
They said osteitis pubis was with the diagnosis, but I had a few specialists that came out, and each of them had different opinions. It was like, oh, I don't think it's that. It was like, well, it could be, but the way you showing this, and I tell you what, I got a lot of blood taken for real. Like I'm talking about tubes. I'm like, bro, what are y'all gonna do with this, but overall, I think they diagnosed it with osteitis pubis. That was the last thing. Oh, scary. It's scary as hell. Like, not being able to move your legs is like one of those things that make you just think like, is this it? Like, whatever, But then finally, obviously, the feeling came back, and the doctor was very, particular. They did come back, just give it time. So that kind of gave me a little hope. But I know, like, the 10 days I was there, I think I slept maybe like 8 hours, 10 hours max. Like, I was just so much pain, man, that like I just remember I think I could get medicine every 2 hours. So I would literally like get medicine and go to sleep for like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And now I look at the clock and just watch it go for like the next hour and 40 minutes. And like, as soon as 2 hours hit, I'm like, hey, I need some medicine. So definitely one of those low points in my life, but definitely got through it, and glad to be here. So.
The football part of it, like the frustration would be, this was like contract year time, right? And you were playing well up to when you got hurt.
Playing great.
I mean, what was that frustration like to have that going on and knowing that this was maybe your chance to cash it?
Yeah, man. I think that kind of hit me hard as well. Just knowing it was the last year contract year, especially the first year Tyreek wasn't here. I thought it was a chance I really can step into a role to really help this team. So yeah, when that happened, that definitely was one of the first thoughts. Like, dang, like, man, it was really my chance. But honestly, I kind of look at it as one of those like things happen for a reason. I think I kind of got more, like arrogant inside in a sense, but kind of like one of those things. I think God just, kind of like just send me down and let me know, like, I can take this game away from you anytime. So, kind of one of those things that you gotta, sit back and, look at things that you've done and, just kind of, figure out what you was doing wrong or where it may be. Even though I was playing well, I think God still got this last say-so on anything that you do. And I think that's kind of what kind of like hit me hard, and kind of got closer with him on that side, and just kind of lean towards that. Like, let's start just play this game for you and rather than for myself, and what comes with it. So now it's just more so like, man, whatever happens, but I'm just playing this game because I can, because He allowed me to play it, and whatever comes along with it comes along with it.
All right, McCole Hardman. Back with the Chiefs.
Wild.
A lot there. We mentioned earlier in the show that he had sent out a tweet maybe a week or so ago before he came back to Kansas City that one day he hopes to be able to explain like what he was going through last year. Well, we just got the full scale of everything, and you heard him mention there. He had the abdominal injury, middle of last year. Nobody really knew it, but he was in the hospital for 10 days. Couldn't walk, didn't have feeling for 4 days in the hospital, and officially it was osteitis pubis or something is what they diagnosed him with. He had a cramp in his stomach. And every hour he said it got worse and worse. Quote, it was scary as hell, but finally the feeling in my legs came back. I was in so much pain. And then he came back for the AFC title game, and then he tore his groin. So I love how he did mention, someone was like, you were playing really well. He's like, I was playing great.
He's like, you're playing really well. Playing great.
He's like, I was playing great at that moment
really
as well.
He was playing really well. He had 5 touchdowns.
About 260 yards.
Yeah, he was on pace to have his best receiving season. Like he pointed out, he's like, that was the first season without Tyreek, and it felt like, okay, I had an opportunity to do something special, and in a contract year. It's really interesting. He should be, and look, I think different levels and different times. He has got to be massively motivated. He came off of a Jets team in which he was a non-factor. He had 1 catch for 6 yards. He didn't get on the field. He was gearing up to maybe have the best season of his professional career in the last year in Kansas City. He got hurt. And now he's like in the middle of his 20s. He wants to keep playing NFL football. He's coming off of this really scary injury situation last year. You're going to get properly motivated, McCole. We talked about a lot
Sounds
about
like he has a new approach just
that
on
is
life.
Absolutely
Not
wild.
like he also just has a new approach on football and life a little bit too. I think and we talk about this with anybody, right? Not only athletes, but considering going through what we all know what he went through. And was in the hospital, and who knows if you're going to walk again, that kind of stuff. It does. It does give you a new feeling and approach sometimes to how things are going. And we'll see what he brings to the table on the field, right? Wishing the best, obviously, off the field. But on the field, I think in the red zone is where he can really help this football team.
I wasn't expecting that today from McCole. I was on my deathbed for 4 days.
Dude, just imagine all of a sudden not being able to walk for 4 days. That's not feeling in your feet.
It'd be scary if it was me or you. Imagine if you're an early 20s professional athlete.
Yeah.
It's not only you're worried about your actual health, you're worried about your entire livelihood.
Absolutely.
Like, that's got to be just a terrifying moment. It makes me, I'll say this, all that makes me root for McCole Hardman.
Sure.
Like, I really hope he has success this season. Been a very difficult year, it sounds like.
Well, the Chiefs kept saying, remember when it was going on last year? They they don't have to.
They were coy.
Nobody
They were
has
quiet.
to. Not required to give us every detail by any means, and if the player wants to keep something private, he's now willing to share it. But at that time, they were calling it just like an abdominal and pelvis issue, and it sounds like maybe they didn't really know what it was at first. He mentioned a bunch of doctors were telling him different things. They didn't really determine what it was till later. So maybe it was just this kind of weird, freaky thing. But now everybody kind of has some background information on what's going on there. We'll talk some fantasy football with Paul Charchian here in about 12 minutes or so. But let's get to the random question of the day.
Random question.
For you, Gold. For you, Drew. Over on the text line, 913-586-7610. And, of course, you can hit us up on the streams, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Real quick, if you follow us on YouTube at 610 Sports KC, we've said through the end of Friday, if you are a new follower, we'll give you a chance to come to Club 610. We're going to choose a couple of people out of the new followers to come in for a Club 610. You had mentioned the other day. Did you know it was the 100th anniversary of Disney? Yeah, man,
I
I
did
did
a thing
know.
on Monday Night Football for it.
Of course I knew. I have children. They got a new Disney movie coming out. I think it's like the 100th anniversary movie, Wish or whatever it's called. I'm sure my kids will make me go see it. So I was thinking about that the other day. And I'm like, you know what? Makes a perfect random question. And because it was music-based, I warned you the random question was coming so you could prepare something. I don't know either of your answers, but the question is, what Disney song do you think is the most underrated?
Underrated.
In
so
your
nobody
life?
Can choose Hakuna Matata or something.
Yeah, don't come hit me. Yeah, don't come hit me with don't hit me for anything. Honestly, anything from the Lion King soundtrack.
Don't do Frozen, Cody.
Is borderline.
All right?
I'm not,
don't do a Frozen song. All right.
Let It Go got
can't do that.
Outplayed in my house.
Can't do that.
Are you kidding me?
All right.
So I'll let you guys go first. I'll give you mine.
Yeah, underrated. I'll actually go with. I think a Disney movie in general. The movie might be a little underrated.
Wow.
The
okay.
Aristocrats.
The Aristocrats.
Yeah, that's right.
Not the movie I was anticipating you answering.
So this was one of the songs.
The cat's the only cat who knows how to swing.
But no dick, long-head dick, stuff like that.
When everybody wants to be a cat, a square with a horn makes you wish you weren't born. Every time he plays, oh, a rinky-tinky-dinky with a square in the act, you can set music back to the caveman days.
Oh, a
This is your song?
You said underrated. I can't pick Hakuna Matata or
Properly
something.
rated. That song stinks.
What? No.
Also,
the Aristocats came out in 1970, Cody.
Have you watched any of the old Disney movies?
Oh, yeah,
They are sometimes
well, yeah, there's a moment in that song.
problematic.
There's a moment in that song. But the Aristocats came out in 1970.
I can't believe you went back to 1970 for your choice.
The budget for that movie was $4 million. It did $191 million in the box office.
Oh, they did just
Smashing
fine then, didn't they?
success. The Aristocats.
Shocked that was your pick. I didn't think you were gonna go there, man. I don't know.
Well, I was narrowing it
I
down
don't know.
because I couldn't go with some of the ones I wanted to originally because they were too popular
Someone
already.
says, two people on Twitch, the legendary lawyer Catch Up Game, says go to the end of this song. They said that's the best part of the whole thing. Apparently, I'm missing out.
We cut it. Yeah.
Oh, too late. Sorry, Drew. What was your answer?
I've got a couple of them actually.
A couple. Wow.
Well, okay.
No, random questions. One. That's
Yeah,
fine.
I know. I'm sorry.
Fine. Let's hit two. That's fine.
So I had to go way back to like my childhood with this one. I feel like people our age can.
2015.
It's like Drew graduated college, high school, like 2010. He's about to play
about the
something from
90s.
like. He's about to play something from like Wreck-It Ralph.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
it is not.
All right, I'm ready.
What?
Come on now. Come on, y'all.
Did you miss the underrated part? Winnie the Pooh. That's one of the more
Underrated.
popular. Winnie the Pooh.
I can't believe these two choices to start.
Well,
I am
let me
shocked
go
by these
to.
starts.
Let me
Well,
go
the
to.
Aristocats is the Winnie Pooh song is nothing wrong with it, but that's not underrated. Winnie the Pooh, it's Winnie the Pooh.
If
It's like
you were
the
to, hold
song.
on. If you were to say Disney songs, Winnie the
Christopher
Pooh
Robin.
is not the one that you're picking. This
Yeah,
one
that's
as
fair.
well
I
is
wouldn't have
another
thought
good
of
one.
that.
It's not the first song, but like of the movies, it's probably still one of the 10 most popular Disney songs. Yeah.
When it comes up,
Characters.
Characters.
All right, what's your
All right.
second one?
Good job, you big nabob. You ain't never had a friend, never had a friend. You ain't never
I mean, this
Robin
is
Williams,
this
come
is
on,
a
man.
hit.
That's what I'm saying. These aren't underrated.
Yeah, yes, it is.
This is a great one.
This is an all-time.
But this is
Underrated.
Are there people that are underrating that one?
That's underrated.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right. Look, I mean, that one's an absolute hit. There's just no doubt about that.
Next thing you know, he's going to pull out the bare necessities from the Jungle Book.
No,
and
that,
act like that's underrated.
No, that is a hit. That was the first one that came to mind. And then you've got A Friend in Me, Toy Story. That's another hit.
All right.
Aladdin, I think, is forgotten by a lot of people.
Aladdin?
Yes.
You think Aladdin's forgotten? They just did a live action within the last 5 years.
Yeah, and it was
I don't
not
know if
good.
Aladdin's forgotten.
I
Look,
never saw the live
I
action.
believe I've admitted this on the air before. I don't think video exists of it anymore. I didn't choose this song. Just to be clear, I once performed a Little Mermaid song on stage in high school in a purple seashell bra. So I could have
I need video of this.
I don't know if it exists.
Oh, okay.
I don't have video of it.
What school? What
Winnetonka
age?
High School, somewhere between, I graduated in 2003. It must have been junior or senior year.
I'll take Drew and I we talk about Club
Part of your world
Club
was the
610
song, by the way.
invites. We'll come up to terms. If you are someone at Winnetonka High School, the same year you were part of that same musical, if you can get
It was
us
a talent show.
the video of Cody in a purple bra as a mermaid,
green,
I will give you not only Club
mermaid
610 invite. We'll work out something. You'll get a little care package. I don't know. I need that video badly.
I can't tell you if it exists anymore, so I didn't want to go with that song. Plus, Little Mermaid's another one just has hit after hit. I instead went with this song.
Hey! I'm not gonna get
I included the movie.
This is a good one.
Goofy?
This is a good one.
Some people settle for the typical thing.
Goofy movie?
Living all their lives waiting in the wings. It ain't a question of
This is a forgotten movie. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Stand Out is an incredible song. Kevin Campbell did this. It's a real musician.
No, Goofy movie was solid. And yeah, you forget about the song.
Come on, that one. Stand Out is a fantastic. I could have gone eye to eye. I could have gone several
There's so many good
songs
ones.
from
Someone
that.
I should have pulled something from Fievel Goes West. That was one of my favorites as a kid too. Just the movie,
What?
let alone the song. You ever watch Fievel Goes West?
It's been a really long time since I've seen it.
American Tale. Fievel Goes West. Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Okay, since the one from Aladdin I picked was too good. How about
How many more did you have?
Again, if you're choosing Robin Williams,
I can prep,
I mean,
boys.
Man's a king.
How about the Tigger theme?
Drew just picked
Tigger?
You just picked all the popular ones.
No, I did not.
Glad to meet you. Name's Tigger. T-I-double-G-R. That spells Tigger. The wonderful
These
thing
are like
about
toddlers.
Tigger, the wonderful
I
thing.
know.
The tops are made out of rubber. The bottoms are made out of spring. The bouncy, 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 fun, 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 fun.
Come on.
But the most wonderful things about Tigger is that I'm the only one.
Someone says "Make a Man Out of You" from Milan is a great song.
That is a very good one. Yes.
Oh, that one's great. Hook from Peter Pan is mentioned on here. Under the Sea. Again, Under the Sea, I feel like that's just a hit, right?
That's one of the more popular
That's just one
ones.
of the popular ones. Moana, someone mentioned the one from Moana that I think is underrated because we know the ones that get played out of that. Shiny from Jermaine Clement. That is a very good one from a more
I'd have to
popular.
hear it.
Well, see, there's some recent ones that are probably a bit
A lot of-
underrated
yeah, a
because
lot
they're
of
from
the
newer
newer-
Disney
I
movies that
haven't
I've
seen-
seen, but you haven't.
Yeah, obviously as a kid we watched them, but I don't have kids now, so a lot of the newer Disney movies I haven't seen. So any of the newer soundtracks are ones I'm not as familiar with.
See that's where I ask you, Cody.
Someone says-
If I played any of these songs, Prince Ali or
Yeah.
The Bare Necessities for your kids, would they know what in the world they're listening to? As a result, it's underrated.
They would know one. They would know the one from Aladdin because one of my daughter's friends did a dance to one of the Aladdin ones not that long ago. So she would know one of those. But anyone in which you could still sing the lyrics, like I could to this day sing, I think 90% of the lyrics to "Be Our Guest." It doesn't qualify of underrated
That's a good one,
if
too.
I could just still sing. Couldn't you to this day? If "Be Our Guest," if they just started a karaoke version of this, how many of those lyrics could you knock
Yeah,
out?
yeah.
80, 90% still? I don't know that it qualifies if it's that.
Yeah, Textline thinks Drew's just stuck in Aladdin and Winnie the Pooh.
101 Dalmatians is my jam. It's the best Disney movie that's ever been created, but Cruella de Vil is too
You
popular.
think 101 is Dalmatians is the
101
best?
Dalmatians is
the best
It's great.
That's
Disney
some
movie
real
ever?
old man taste in Disney movies. I kind of thought he was going to bring like a younger Disney
No.
demographic to this question.
my movies growing up. 101 Dalmatians, Lion King, Jungle Book.
I mean, well, Lion King's an all-time.
Aristocats.
Lion King might be the best Disney movie.
You remember The Rescuers Down Under?
But I mean,
That's
Lion
another good
King
one.
came out when we were kids.
Yeah,
You
the
know?
Lion
Robin
King-
Hood was
Like,
great.
if we're really another topic another day, like the Disney movie ranking, I mean, Lion King might be the clear-cut number one of all time. But anyway,
Yes.
that's the random question of the day. Up next,
You
we
guys
get
are
into a little fantasy football. Week 7, who to start on the Chiefs this week, and all these quarterback injuries around the league. Paul Sheehan stops by.
Chiefs fans,
FantasyFootball.com, presented by Twin Peaks. Big week for waiver wire pickups in a lot of the guillotine leagues and bidding and everything that got eliminated from our media one that we've been doing with Charge as well. We can get to that in a second, Charge. But I must say, this is now 2 straight weeks where I've had to bring up a potential conspiracy theory with you. And the latest is around this Chargers fan. Are you still thinking she's a NFL plant?
Well, no, in fairness, I never thought that of this one, although it was weird, like when it happened and you see this lunatic person dislocating her elbows with joy as she's celebrating, the handful of good things that happened to the Chargers and doing a complete meltdown. We're like, this is kind of weird. I mean, it's kind of abnormal. But as it turns out, there's a lot of evidence that she's normal. Now, if you want to go back to the Kelsey Taylor Swift thing, still convinced this whole thing is
just bought a house. They basically just bought a house together, essentially in Leawood.
What do you mean?
They bought a house, $5 million house.
A house together. Both of their names are on the deed.
No, it's just going to be Kelsey's name. But also, this is an awfully elaborate hoax, man.
Well, think about how much money's involved. It can be elaborate. I mean, think about how much money the NFL is making by introducing its game to the one target market it can't ever seem to reach, young women, right? So that's absolutely huge. Think about how much this is worth for her if she's going to reach all of these dudes like us that would have never normally really even cared about Taylor Swift, knew who she was a big deal, didn't care. I mean, think of the money involved. Think about how important this is for these two entities. It's brilliant and epic.
Charge, before I ask you something specific about the fantasy matchups coming up this week, I'm going to ask you a very serious question. I've come to realize that given time and children and all the other things, I straight up don't think I'm good at fantasy football anymore. What's my next course of action? Do I just quit? Do I get back into research? Are there things I can do to skirt this system to not do the level of research I was doing when I was 25? Because I'm not sure I'm good anymore, or everyone else is better.
Or maybe it's just bad luck. I like that you blamed your kids. I mean, that's super cool. Just throw them under the bus. I want to be a good parent and I can't possibly do both well. Mm-hmm. Okay,
so that's part of it.
If nothing else, all my player rankings available for free at guillotineleagues.com. Just take your bathroom time with your phone, bring the phone in the bathroom, just devote that to setting a decent lineup, making a couple of moves, hitting the waiver wire. That's enough. I've got a great podcast that we never talk about called Fantasy Football Weekly. I record it every Friday, late Friday. It breaks down every single game, fantasy style, letter grades on every player. It is the culmination of my week of research into one place, Fantasy Football Weekly, at the end of every week.
Okay. Well, there you go. If anybody listening also wants a quick approach to fantasy football and they need some help heading into this week too, Charge, because there's a lot of injuries with quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah. Bad. It's bad. So you got 6 teams on bye and pretty good teams in totality. And then you've got all the quarterback injuries, including tonight, right? We've got to, we don't know for sure if Trevor Lawrence is going to go tonight. He's got the knee injury. So if you need a backup, I'm here to give you a guy you can pick up off the waiver wire that's got a reasonable chance to perform pretty well. And it's Tyrod Taylor. Not Tyrod. Tyrod Taylor. Now, here's why. It's all about the opponent. It's the Commanders. They have allowed multiple touchdowns to every opposing quarterback except Josh Dobbs in week 1. And that includes third-tier passers like Desmond Ridder and Justin Fields, who just combined for 6 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. But here's the real reason for Taylor. He's very mobile. The Commanders have allowed the second most quarterback rushing yards. And last year, the Giants schemed Daniel Jones to 106 rushing yards in the 2 matchups with Washington. So, yeah, that's your angle right there. Tyrod Taylor is your emergency quarterback.
Charge, are we back to thinking Kyle Pitts is fantasy relevant again? I think we had a conversation earlier in the year where we're like, well, this is no fun, and I certainly don't like it. Is there a way in which Kyle Pitts is now a top 10 play most weeks?
Well, top 10 maybe only because there just aren't that many good. There aren't that many good, reliable tight ends. It's more about the tight end landscape than it is about Kyle Pitts being reliable because we know that that's not generally the case. And Arthur Smith hates passing football. And so there's no safe plays for sure. but he's been better lately. And the last 2 games were home games. We all know Desmond Ritter's home road splits are like night and day, generally a disaster on the road. And he's about the only player that I really talk about home road splits on because it's so
dramatic.
contrary. So yeah, so I need at least another game here. He plays tight. He plays Tampa this week. They haven't allowed a tight end touchdown all season. So we'll see if Pitts can get it together here, and then I'll feel a little more confident. Janu Smith, my guy Janu Smith has been playing great there too, and he's siphoning off some work. So that's an X factor as well.
Paul Charchin of GuillotineLeagues.com joining us. All right, here in Kansas City, the story this week's about McCole Hardman joining back up with the team and trying to figure out this wide receiver room a little bit. Justin Watson's hurt. We know Rashee Rice is emerging. How would you, from a fantasy perspective, approach, or would you just stay away?
Yeah, just stay away. I think the one fantasy element to this move, and tell me if you disagree, because you follow this team as close as anybody. This says a lot about Sky Moore.
Sure,
where
100% with
his development in Sky Moore. That's my takeaway on this is, Sky Moore is supposed to have emerged in year 2 and given the draft equity and how good he was in college, and it just hasn't come. And I think they felt like they needed to make a move with that. And I think it says plenty about him, and I'm dropping him. I'm dropping Sky Moore. And the couple of leagues that I've still had him rostered, that was it. Last stretch, and that's it. He's gone.
Charge, what do we do about tonight? Trevor Lawrence, it looks like he's going to play, but it's not a good matchup for Calvin Ridley anyway. Then you got ETN, who leads the league in touches per game, but it's not a good matchup for him either. Are we starting our Jaguars tonight? How do we move around this?
Yeah, I really like how you set that up. That's exactly right. Let's go to Ridley for a second. 2 gigantic games for Calvin Ridley and 4 awful ones, highly combustible. Saints secondary looks fantastic, but in fairness, the quarterbacks they faced, Tannehill, Bryce Young, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, C.J. Stroud. They're probably still good because they were good last year. They're probably still good this year. But that's a tricky one. Zay Jones has been ruled out, so a few extra looks for Calvin Ridley. He's my wide receiver 20, so I think he's right on the cusp of where you'd want to be to start him. Travis Etienne, I was very nervous about him coming into this season because he had not shown ability to be good at the things we needed him to be really good at, which was catching passes and scoring touchdowns, and he's doing those things, and Tank Bigsby is glued to the bench. So he's just getting so much volume that he almost can't lose, but you're right, Saints, only team that is not allowed a running back touchdown this year is the Saints. They rank 8th best in run stuff win rate, 8th best in total run defense by Pro Football Focus. So a tricky matchup. You got to start him, but a tricky matchup. And I have subdued expectations.
Yeah, I hopefully there's some fantasy points to be had because we were talking about this earlier. The Saints, 12 straight games charged. Their games have gone under the total. And the total tonight's
Are you serious?
40 points. All six this year. Yeah, all 6 this year and 12 straight going back to last year. So
speaking of low point totals, the Gopher Iowa game. I'm in Minnesota.
Oh, I know. 31 and a half, right?
It's sitting at 31. There's talk that it could move to be the lowest Division I
like the under
total ever.
I like the under. I'm still going with the under. The last 2 that it tied with in the last 20 years for that total were both Iowa games as well, and one was an Iowa-Minnesota game.
Was it really? I didn't know that. I wonder if those went under.
Yeah, they did. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's tied
for.
They
did go under the number too.
It's tied for the lowest total in the last 20 years, and the other ones that are tied with, it was an Iowa-Kentucky game, and it was an Iowa-Minnesota game, and yeah, they went under.
And they went under. Unreal.
Jeez. Church, I kind of thought after Justin Jefferson got shut down by the Chiefs defense, but then got hurt, Jordan Addison became an instant play. They looked kind of off. Kirk Cousins might be one of those guys you have to start this week because you don't have a lot of quarterbacks like you mentioned. Are you feeling okay about some of the Minnesota players right now offensively?
No. Not at all. Against the Bears, the Vikings offense generated 1 touchdown, ran the ball for 2 yards per carry, and Kirk Cousins threw for 180 yards. And here comes the Niners. So your startable Vikings are T.J. Hawkinson on volume. He's not having a very good year. You saw some key drops against your Chiefs. And then you mentioned Kirk Cousins. This is right on the edge of starting grade for Cousins. Niners rank number 1 in coverage, number 1 in pass rush by Pro Football Focus. Vikings offensive line has been shockingly competent this year, so it's not an automatic that Kirk's going to take like 9 sacks in this game like it used to be. But for Cousins, I think your only real ray of hope here, the Niners played a very weak slate of quarterbacks, and the only Cousins-level quarterback to face San Francisco, Matthew Stafford, put up 307 yards and a touchdown, so that's not bad. So I've got Kirk coming in as quarterback 13 this week, and so you may have a better option with somebody else.
Paul Charchian of GuillotineLeagues.com. He joins us every Thursday, gets us set up for, in this case, week 7 of the fantasy football season. And the podcast, again, Fantasy Football Weekly, right?
Fantasy Football Weekly, yes. Thank you for subscribing to Fantasy Football
This
Weekly.
wasn't a setup. I really do think I'm terrible at fantasy football.
Well, nobody's even questioning you on that. We're accepting that you're awful. I'm just trying to give you some avenues to get better without having to actually work at it.
There it is. All right, Charge. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
We'll
Bye-bye.
check in next Thursday with Paul Charchian. Before we get to what Bill Self had to say yesterday, you guys see the latest NCAA story going on right now around college football? Michigan is in hot water over potentially sign stealing. So I don't know if Bill Belichick's been on campus recently or if the Houston Astros are up there, but Michigan is in hot water over potentially stealing coaching signals. This all has to do with the 1994 rule. So that's the only part where I'm like, okay. But I guess at that time it said you can't do advanced scouting of opponents. It was a 1994 money-saving rule, but they're in some trouble right now around stealing some signs from opponents and head coaches.
Credible evidence that Michigan football has stolen signals from opposing team coaches during the 2023 season.
Yeah, this year. This is not a passing. This is this year. Get Josh Vernier on the phone. Find out what he has to say about his alma mater.
This is also why Harbaugh was trying to get his ass back to the NFL. He's tired of all this. You can't sign steal in NFL either, but...
I feel like the whole thing is advanced scouting is the key phrase there because, like Vinny put it, I believe, on Tuesday, if you're in the middle of the game, and it's totally different if it's in the game, but if you're advanced scouting and you're looking at film, it's like, oh, yeah, they swung their hand to the left and they put up a sign that had this and they ran this play, then we know what it is.
I mean, that's exactly what we accused the Patriots of doing, and they did do, so...
Yikes.
Is he ever, like, if he gets embroiled in another controversy, eventually some NFL team's not going to just take the risk on him. There's just a little too much, like, trouble there.
Well, there was rumors that he was getting a lifetime, he might be offered another extension at Michigan. Or earlier this week, that was some of the rumblings as well.
Here's the thing. This isn't the kind of thing that would necessarily cost you your job unless you weren't coaching well. Does that make sense? In college, the whole thing about you losing your job in college is about whether or not you're coaching well enough to not lose your job, if that makes sense. He's coaching well enough not to lose his job that they might look past this. What kind of punishment do you offer for this?
I have no idea. I have no clue what that would be.
That's interesting.
Thinking of punishments, some that didn't happen, but some that everybody thought could occur around KU's basketball program. We know last week they were essentially cleared of the serious violations, and the self-imposed suspensions for the program held up, and everything got downgraded from level 1 violations, and they do have to vacate some wins from 2018, I guess it'd be 2017, 2018. But other than that, of course, moving forward, I thought what Bill Self had to say yesterday was really interesting. This, in fairness, was originally reported a week ago from Mike Vernon, who has been really well connected in the inner workings right now with anything going on with KU from a reporting standpoint. Yeah. And he mentioned that Bill Self had offered the NCAA back in 2022 that, hey, let's just get this thing over with. I'm willing to sit out the NCAA tournament if you guys will basically just end this thing, move on. The NCAA said no, Cody, and of course they went on to win the national championship. But Bill Self confirmed that did occur yesterday.
Did you offer sitting out the 22 tournament?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to talk about things that were done, but I think it's been reported. Yeah. And what was reported was accurate. Yeah, I was at the point, guys. I would have done just about anything to get over with. For the protection of our players and for the future, not knowing the process or trusting the process whatsoever. So that what was reported was accurate. I don't know all the things that were reported, but that aspect of it was. And when that was done the week that my father passed. And I know my dad told me, whatever you do, get this behind you. So there were some things going on with that probably influenced it. And I'll be honest with you, we had a good team. I didn't think we were that good. I mean, Kentucky just beat us 20 at home. So it was it would have been bad for the present players, obviously, and looking back now would have been a disaster. But that was the only reason why. It's just to try to move it. No admission of guilt, but just to try to move it forward where the stress and all the things that go along with it were not a part of it.
How about that? That's pretty wild, though. And he gave some background again on the timing and some advice that his dad had given him and everything, who has obviously passed away. But the fact that the NCAA had that as an option as well, and they are like, no, that's not good enough. And then now seeing what the punishment ended up being, that would have been as strong as any punishment, making him not eligible to go
entire
postseason. And then
Yeah.
again, they went on and won the national championship. So that's why it's pretty.
Dude, when he was like, I'm ready to get on the recruiting, I'm going to go for people's throats.
He did say that yesterday.
Self seems like now that this is behind him, he's like a free man. Because
Well, I'm
imagine
sure.
how long,
Dude, think about
this
it.
must have been hovering over your head. Ugh.
For 6 years or whatever, you don't know if you're thinking worst case scenario and everything that's going on. But that's pretty wild to hear that was actually a thing. Again, Mike Vernon originally reported it. One thing I have to say is the Big 12's got to help out K-State a little bit here. Or at least I should say respect K-State. Probably didn't expect me to be saying that today. Did you see?
No, I did not anticipate
So
that.
yesterday, Big 12 Media Days, and all the coaches are there, right? Jerome Tang's talking. And multiple times, either the moderator or the lower third on the ESPN graphics couldn't get his name correct. And this dude just went to an Elite Eight last year. Show some respect for Jerome Tang. It said Jerome Tong and other things on there. Like, come on now. This dude's not just some random head coach. He was one of the best coaches in the country last year.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Come on, Big 12.
The one thing you don't get wrong, and it's not like it's spelling it, Jerome Tang. It's spelled how it sounds.
They also not picked particularly. They were outside of the top 25, even though Jerome Tang did exactly that last year. Remember, he took a completely transferred team with no expectations and took them to the Elite Eight with a chance to go to the Final Four. They lost obviously to FAU or whatever, but yeah, feels like they could probably get his name right.
They
It
were
doesn't seem
picked,
like it's way out of the question.
What, like 6th, I think? I believe. I'm pulling the preseason poll up now. Kansas obviously picked first.
Here's what I do like about Bill Self's comments. And again, I'm not the Kansas fan you are, so it's a little bit different, but
Yeah, Cody, remember he's the Missouri guy.
I like that this is like rubbing their nose in it again. You could have gotten him worse. You could have just, for years and years, you cannot move the wheels of justice this slow for the NCAA recruiting infraction. This is not like the murder trials move faster. What are we doing here? They're very serious things with very serious people get done in a third of the time. They're taking 6 years to sort this. He offered to miss an entire NCAA tournament. You passed. He won the whole damn thing anyway. The NCAA looks so stupid.
Oh, yeah, they
Looks so stupid. And you could see he's trying to be a little bit careful there for a second, not to completely rub the nose. I don't think I'm supposed to talk a lot about that.
But it
that
was
report,
reported.
That was reported, and that report was true. I'd have done anything to get that thing out of the way. And at that point, could you blame him? He's 5 years. He's 4 years past this thing. He's like, these players weren't even here. I don't want to care about this anymore.
He knows how to play the game.
Kansas picked first. K-State picked 6th. Houston picked 2nd. Obviously coming in with that powerhouse of a program, Kelvin Sampson.
Kelvin Sampson yesterday said that he was wondering where the Chihuahuas were at, like he had in the American Conference. And he said there's a bunch of basically, what did he say? What were the dogs he mentioned? Basically great, Great Danes and pit bulls and stuff in the Big 12 compared to where he was at.
Tang is easily one of the most likable coaches in the country right now, by the way. He's talking about Deion Sanders. Yes, smart, by the way. Said he wants to take his brand global.
It's because Deion sent him, gave him a pair of the sunglasses,
Shades?
but the brand.
Yeah.
I know they were sunglasses, but what's
I remember the brand?
Oakley's?
No. Blinder? Anyway, it was his brand, whatever the hell the name of the brand. Anyway, gave him the ones that he gave the whole team, and that obviously the comments from the Colorado State head coach, and that prompted the sales to spike dramatically.
Good stuff.
Won that game, although it was a lot
Overtime.
closer. They're just a roller coaster. If they had
Blenders.
Blenders. If they had anything close to a functional defense, Colorado would have 6 or 7 wins right now.
Yeah, we know where they're going in the transfer portal. They're going to get a whole new starting offensive line and starting defensive line.
Yeah,
and
pretty
they'll
much.
be able to do it too.
And then with the rest of the players they already have, they'll probably be pretty squared away.
Coming up next, we'll get to what's trending and why I think this means the Chiefs are done even around the trade deadline.
Cody and Gold.
People always call us like a bleak show.
could on Twitch as well, but specifically YouTube, youtube.com/@610sportskc. Again, if you subscribe on YouTube, you'll be entered in the little contest we're doing for a couple Club 610 invites. Got till tomorrow to do that. And so if you already subscribed, you're good. No worries there, but we appreciate it.
Seems like an easy enough
we
bribe we're offering here.
We heard from Mecole Hardman talk about clearly a very serious injury and caused him not to be able to walk, couldn't feel his legs and everything like that. I think that move and the pending move of Frank Clark, whenever that becomes official, he's having a physical today, and then Amenahue essentially being a mid-season acquisition, even though he was an off-season one and he's been suspended, as we all know, for 6 weeks. I think they're done. Like coming up on the 31st, there'll be some more articles coming out on who the Chiefs could target. I think financially and with what they've done this week, I think they're out of the game,
kind of what
man.
They were looking at, right?
I think they're out of the game. I think they decided they found some cost-effective methods to familiarity as well, guys that can jump right in, specifically talking about Mecole Hardman that knows the offense. Frank Clark might be more of a true depth piece with that signing when that happens. Amenahue was one of their big defensive signings anyway. I think these are their moves they're going to make midseason. Unless there's an injury, I don't think they're like DeAndre Hopkins' name can get floated out all at once. If it's really a third-round pick, I have zero interest. Plus, it's a guy that has a contract year still next year.
I just don't think about what they have left to do financially or what they would be targeting. The two things we thought they could target at the trade deadline were wide receiver and defensive lineman. They got both. And I think that they did these. I think part of the way you should look at these deals is they kind of did them on the cheap. Doesn't mean they can't work. It doesn't mean it won't work, but they're doing them on the cheap. And they have to do them on the cheap, Gold, because Chris Jones is a very expensive player, a more expensive player than they were planning on him being in the year of 2023. But because they couldn't get a long-term deal done, that meant no Carlos Dunlap or none of these other little ancillary moves before the season. Remember, they just kind of shut down shop. Stopped looking for players, played other young players, and moved on to it for that direction instead. Now that they've got a couple of $1 million to work with, how can we do this cheap? Well, Mecole Hardman, because we're 6 games into the season, and he wasn't being paid that much to begin with, he's cheap, knows our system, we're good. Next up, Frank Clark, probably going to end up being league minimum. Reports are obviously he's going to get the physical today and then end up signing with the team. So this is the moves that you can afford to make. The best news in all of this, and the way that I constantly look at it is be like, well, I want them to make more. They're 5-1. They're defending Super Bowl champions. They have one of the best point differentials in all the league, even if you think they're playing in too many damn close games. They are, by all metrics, one of the best teams in football. And they just, in my opinion, improved their wide receiver situation and added one extra piece to their defensive line depth. That's good enough for me for a trade deadline.
It's been such a disappointing wide receiver room that it probably doesn't take much to upgrade it, but they did upgrade it. Nobody's saying it's this massive. They didn't go out and get a top 15 receiver. Nobody's arguing that. But they got better with Mecole Hardman. Let's keep it in perspective, as you were saying. Most Chiefs fans were fine with him departing in the offseason. And so it's funny now everybody's acting like they never thought it was good with him to leave, or it's interesting how the narrative shifted. You come away and now you left as a 7 and you're now a 10, I guess, coming back if you're a Mecole Hardman for a lot of people. But he's going to help them in the red zone. I think that's where he's going to help this team the most.
If that's where he helps them the most, that's the best possible.
That's their area. They have issues.
That's the only area they help him great.
I think that's the area he benefits the most. For his career going forward for next offseason and what can benefit the Chiefs.
Do we know how many snaps Jerick McKinnon has had in the red zone? I don't know if there's any way to tell.
I don't know the exact snaps, but we've talked all week, right, about McKinnon being another red zone weapon for them. We looked it up. Last year was after week 9 that he really started to get his touchdown numbers up. I think McKinnon, before the Mecole Hardman trade, we mentioned that's somebody that could help him in the red zone. So I don't think that changes.
Well, yeah, the reason I mentioned that is because I think, Mecole Hardman is a guy that's lined up in the backfield aside from Mahomes. Like, you can move him almost anywhere, and he can be productive out of the backfield next to Mahomes running to the flat or whatever the case may be, and in the slot and all over the place. So that's, I think, makes a lot of sense in that role.
Yeah, it does. And think what you will about Mecole Hardman. I do still think he's a very limited player. I don't think that is an unfair diagnosis of his play. It's just why in Kansas City most people were willing to let Mecole Hardman go. Once you saw Sky Moore and some of these other guys not be able to perform inside the red zone and have struggles, McColl started to look more appealing. But if there's one thing he's good at, it's getting in the end zone. Okay? It just is. I was looking at it just to where he compares. And remember that McColl Hardman plays a limited number of snaps compared to other players in the Chiefs offense during this time. He has almost the same number or the same number of touchdowns in the last 4 years since he's been in the league as Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, George Kittle, Keenan Allen. He is within 2 touchdowns of all of the players I just mentioned. He scores. It may be his biggest strength. He is good at getting in the end zone because he's fast and he's good at creating space, or because other players around him are the feature of the attention and then he gets to run free.
He also just cuts up field when he gets the ball in his hand.
He does.
And that's where I think, as much as people want to bring up the jet sweep, and he's effective at it, but it's not like they run it 100 times that you would think the Chiefs do based on how it gets discussed, but they don't. I think at wide receiver screen, wide receiver screens where he can help. And if MVS is struggling this year, and he certainly is, to get open down the field and spread the field a little bit, and the Chiefs as an offense are struggling to really convince the defenses to play up more because there's no threat right now, McColl Hardman might be able to help you vertically. And we'll see. As much as the red zone,
they don't
I think
have a deep passing game right now.
And right now with Justin Watson going to be out, but let's not act like he's out for 10. People are acting like he's going to be out for like 2 or 3 weeks unless they put him on IR.
But as of right now, Justin Watson has been your deep passing game, right? I guess we all assumed it was going to be MVS, but Justin Watson's been the entirety of your deep passing game.
Yeah, but I guess
and Travis Kelce.
I don't believe that the Justin Watson injury is the reason they traded for McColl Hardman. I think it's a factor. I think more of a factor, though, is what you were saying. Disappointment from Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and MVS, I guess. All 3, really.
Yeah.
For this wide receiver room, and where can he help them? Does the Justin Watson injury make it make more sense? Sure. But again, Justin Watson's not out for the season. He's out for 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think they're trading for McColl Hardman just for a 2-week run here, okay? McColl Hardman's going to be part of this offense the rest of the season now.
And aren't they 2 very different receivers, in terms of style of play? Like they're not very similar or comparable, I guess, to what they bring to the offense. I think that there are 2 different types of wide receiver.
I think it's the trust part. I think they're similar in terms of trust. I know at times throughout the early portion of McColl's career, a lot of people wondered if Mahomes trusted McColl, but in a weird way, right now, if you were to go through and list out who do you really think Mahomes trusts the most in the wide receiver room, Justin Watson was probably number 1 prior to the injury, and I guess still is. McColl might be 2 or 3.
Depending on where Rashee Rice has climbed up in the rankings,
and I think he trusts MVS, but he's just not even getting open right now. But I think McColl Hardman instantly jumps towards the top of the list of guys Mahomes trusts just because he knows this offense, even if there was frustrations in the past of what McColl was. And that, to me, is the bigger reason maybe for the move, too. Like, it's not just like, does he match a skill set of somebody? It's getting more guys that Mahomes is comfortable with.
I will say this. If the Chiefs just one time in a draft, and I know we brought this up during the draft before, if just one time in the draft they wanted to go for the 6'2", 215-pound wide receiver, though, I'd appreciate it. Are they trying to set a record for under 5'10", 190-pound slot receivers? Because if so, they're real close. Almost got it nailed. It feels like at some point they are going to have to go contrary to what they have done at wide receiver for a number of years and actually target a traditional outside route running wide receiver. My only problem with McColl is, I swear to you, it feels like they got nothing but slot guys. We're hearing that they can't play Sky Moore as much because Rashee Rice needs to be in the slot. Okay, so now we're to 2 slot guys. Well, that's, also kind of where Kadarius Toney is the best. Now we're at 3. Well, that's primarily where McColl Hardman played. Now we're at 4.
Yeah, by the way, though, I was gonna say, size-wise, MVS is actually very similar to the exact size you gave.
Oh, I know.
He just hasn't been able to.
Well, he plays on the outside. He's just a limited player.
He's 6'4", 208, so he's pretty damn close to what you're saying. He just, this year, has been a disappointment. He's regressed. I hope there's still something in the back half of the season for MVS, because last year he did serve a big role. He obviously made huge plays in the AFC title game, but he has been a disappointment to this point.
Both of these deals, the McColl Hardman and the Frank Clark deal, we're calling success if they make one play in the playoffs that helps them win the Super Bowl, right? We're good here, or the AFC title game.
Sure.
If McColl Hardman gets a touchdown in the red zone against the Bills in the AFC title game and they go on to the Super Bowl, it worked. I'm good here. These are low-risk moves, so I'll take low reward.
Yeah, I'm not worried about swapping 2025 7th-round, 6th-round picks. It's going to be okay.
Was anyone else, Drew, I don't know if you were on social media last night, I was genuinely kind of surprised at the number of people who were losing it.
Oh, you shouldn't be surprised. You know this, Cody. You know how this stuff goes, though.
Over picks. I get it. Now that you see all the picks they've given up, they had to like give up a 7th, and they might have given up a comp pick because of the comp pick formula for going back in there. I'm not saying that they didn't give up any value, but it is not that hard to re-secure some 6th or 7th round picks.
2 years from now, Cody. 2 years from now, too. It's not even this coming draft. The one today, by the way, roster-wise.
A couple years ago. We're good.
Roster-wise, we know that they did cut Montreal Washington today. We figured that was the likely corresponding move. And they also, to make room for what we assume will be Charles Omenihu, although maybe it's the Frank Clark move, because I think they still have the roster exemption going for Omenihu. They did cut, thinking of draft picks, though. This one is one to watch. Keandre Coburn, who was a rookie, this year's 6th-round pick. Hopefully they can get back on the practice squad. Otherwise, that was a 6th-round pick that would have already have gone away from you, that you just drafted. So hopefully he's someone they can sneak through onto the to the practice squad. Someone else mentioning Justin Ross is that 6'4" target you're talking about. Again, Justin Ross, the playing time hasn't been there. And
Rice is 6'1". He's the guy succeeding the most.
I feel
it turns out the big wide receiver doing okay.
I've seen in.
It's not just about the height. I understand. I don't want them to just get any 6'3". That's Justin Ross.
Rasheed's good enough that he can play in the slot and outside, though. It's not like he's stuck at one position because of what he can play both of them. That's how good he is.
Truthfully, it's not a height thing. They need a wide receiver who can line up on the outside and win. If it was DJ Moore, I wouldn't be complaining. They need a wide receiver who can line up, be an outside wide receiver, and win as an outside wide receiver. That's legitimately what I'm asking for. I understand when I'm saying I'd like some guy who's 6'4" and 240 pounds, which doesn't exist at
Cody
the wide
wants
receiver
DK
position.
Metcalf, okay? Cody wants DK Metcalf. That's what he wants. 913-586-7610. I've seen a lot of this. It says the Chiefs are obviously missing Tyreek Hill this year. We have no deep threat. Look, obviously they'd be better with Tyreek Hill this year. But legit question, how many years down the road do we get a still reference? Legit question.
One more.
Okay, because in 2027, are we going to say? Because guess what?
Just
guess
this
what?
one. That's it.
The Minnesota Vikings could sure use Randy Moss this year too.
That's right.
The Patriots could sure use Randy Moss. How many years
Just
do we
this
drop?
year, then we're done.
I'm just a legit question because they're not wrong. Those that text in, I'm not even disagreeing with you. But how many years past the Tyreek Hill trade do we still sit here and say, well, they could sure use a Tyreek Hill? Well, they also won a Super Bowl without him. And Chris Jones may not be in this position, and this defense might not be in the position they're in if he was still in this organization too.
Because they won the Super Bowl, you should never question it. Like, you should never. But sometimes you ever just sit around and be like, okay, so they won the Super Bowl last year, and they spent those picks on George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie that helped them win the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
Do you ever wonder, though, like, would they have won the Super Bowl anyway if they just had Tyreek instead
I mean, it's
of
a
those
great
two
mystery.
guys?
Yeah, it's a fun hypothetical.
It's a fun hypothetical, but it also doesn't matter because they won it with the other two. Yeah. And now in year 2 with those players, they have one of the league's best defenses. So you could ask the same question. Hey, if we swapped out right now George Karlaftis and Trent McDuffie, who, by the way, currently ranks as the #1 rated corner in all of football. So if those two guys were gone, Karlaftis and Tyreek Hill were gone, and instead it was Tyreek Hill, do I still think the Chiefs would be 5-1? Yeah, I'll be honest. Probably. They probably would have just scored 36 points a game and let up 22 points a game, and it's probably not that big of a swing for either, but you get the point.
That was what you guys referenced earlier in the week, is if this defense, if it was flip-flopped and the offense was scoring 30 points a game and the defense was mid-pack, then people would be like, we're fine,
but that's
the offense is good.
Why would I flip-flop the trade if both things end up with the same result and one are younger and cheaper and means I can add different players going forward? And I have multiple years of cheap control. If you're asking me to flip-flop, I have to, just logically, have to take the guaranteed Super Bowl in the bag and the cheaper, most economical,
Tyreek Hill's incredible.
Logical afford.
Tyreek Hill's incredible.
Player.
To me, he's the best receiver in football. Justin Jefferson is right there, but I think Tyreek Hill is the best receiver in football. But yeah, I was just legit was asking you. You said next year, okay? Because I was wondering, how many years are we going to be like, well, if they had this player, and now the answer we've determined is next year, hopefully. I was just curious.
I do think the way that the Chiefs are doing their business just in terms of the draft is they've been doing, with the last few picks, they've been getting stronger on defense to try to pair that with Patrick Mahomes. And now we're at the point where, hey, the defense is really strong. You've used a lot of these high draft picks on defensive guys. Looking forward, this is where you get Patrick that extra help where the Green Bay Packers, for example, keep on drafting defensive guys. Their defense is really good, but they never got Aaron Rodgers' help, and Aaron was able to make it work. But what can they do? What can Brett Fuge do in the offseason to get Patrick Mahomes some more help. Of course, it comes down to proper evaluation of wide receivers and, bringing the right guys in. That obviously is what it comes down to. But that's where the direction seems to be going for the Chiefs from here on out at least for now in the draft is let's get Patrick the proper help that he needs because our defense is so good.
It's just, that's the funny thing about the comp picks. Be like, well, the 49ers build it by compiling picks and taking all these players. But then the flip side of that is, well, they can afford to pay all these players because they don't pay a quarterback. It's like, hey, they're keeping a championship roster without a championship quarterback. Look at how good they are. I'm like, well, they can have other championship players because they don't pay that quarterback. The Chiefs have to do it their way because they have the most expensive quarterback in the NFL. And it seems like, last I checked, it's been going pretty good.
Tomorrow on the show, it's a Red Friday. We'll give away some pizza thanks to our friends at The Other Place. We'll have a little Club 610. Special cocktail on tap for tomorrow afternoon. We'll see who stops by for a little Club 610. Pete Sweeney going to join us at some point tomorrow as well. We'll get you set for the Chiefs and the Chargers. In the meantime, have a good rest of the day. The Drive with CDOT coming up next.